Chapter 946. Qin Chuan had returned to Sai Na City for a spot. Now that Ao Feng had agreed to give him a spot, he let out a long sigh of relief. In that case, I have to thank you. Qin Chuan chuckled. I've been coveting this spot for a long time. Ao Feng laughed and said straightforwardly, there's no need to be so courteous between us brothers. You're the only 5th-tier formation master participating in the Talisman Formation Master Exchange Conference. No one will dare to say anything if I give you a spot. To Ao Feng, a spot to comprehend Dao runes wasn't something precious. Since Qin Chuan wanted it, he would give it to Qin Chuan. It wasn't a big deal at all. Right, I have one more thing to ask of you. Qin Chuan looked at Ao Feng. I hope Brother Ao can help me arrange for the Heath City's Talisman Formation Master Association to be one of the top 10 Talisman Formation Master Associations. You don't need to say anything. I've already done it for you. Ao Feng smiled at Qin Chuan and said, I know about your relationship with President Sua. I've already taken care of this matter since the first day I returned to Sai Na City. Don't worry. As long as I'm still alive and control the Imperial family, the Heath City's Talisman Formation Master Association will always be one of the top 10 Talisman Formation Masters. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan immediately took out a bottle of fine wine from his storage ring and said to Ao Feng, the words of thanks are in the wine. I'll drink first. After resolving the matter with Zhua Sisi and the Rose City, Qin Chuan could prepare to head to Tron Nebula to comprehend Dao runes without worry. With Ao Feng's help, he could save a lot of effort. It was a good thing. Qin Chuan and the other two drank in the Imperial City until midnight. Qin Chuan was finally able to leave and return to the Rose Hotel. What Qin Chuan didn't expect was that the first thing he saw upon returning to the hotel was Tushan Ling. Brother Qin, long time no see. Looking at Qin Chuan, Tushan Ling praised, that day I saw Brother Qin not fearing the Insect King at all. Brother Qin, you sealed the Insect King with your sound sealing magic and saved the world. I am so proud to have a friend like you. Qin Chuan looked at Tushan Ling curiously and asked, how did you know I was back? I don't know when Brother Qin returned. I've been waiting here all this time. Finally, Brother Qin returned. Tushan Ling looked at Qin Chuan and said seriously, Brother Qin, I wonder if you have any intention of starting a long-term cooperation with our Tushan family. Hearing Tushan Ling's words, Qin Chuan was slightly stunned. He asked in surprise, cooperation? Not joining? Before, we hoped that Brother Qin could join our Tushan family and become one of us. However, after this insect disaster, we realized that Brother Qin, you're not an ordinary person. Sooner or later, you'll become a dragon. Therefore, we changed our minds. We hope that we can reach a long-term cooperation. Looking at Qin Chuan, Tushan Ling said sincerely, this time, I came with the sincerity of our Tushan family. We won't let Brother Qin down. Qin Chuan glanced at Tushan Ling in a complicated way, then said to him, let's go back to the room and talk. Back in the room, Qin Chuan said to Tushan Ling, Brother Ling, tell me, how do we want to cooperate? Before we talk about cooperation, we need to confirm one thing first. Brother Qin, do you have the ability to help people go through the divine punishment with your thunder power? Tushan Ling said seriously, this is the basis of our cooperation. Hearing Tushan Ling, Qin Chuan pondered for a short while, then said to Tushan Ling, to be honest, I'm not sure either, because I only use the power of the thunder power to defuse the divine punishment when I go through the divine punishment myself. I've never helped anyone else with this power. Long ago, Qin Chuan had guessed that Tushan family came to him for this special power of his. Since Tushan Ling didn't try to hide it anymore, Qin Chuan decided to tell him the truth. He didn't have any experience in helping people go through the divine punishment, so he couldn't be sure if it would work. Hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Tushan Ling chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, we've anticipated this as well. So, we need to do an experiment. If the experiment works, we can start cooperation. Hearing this, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What's the cooperation about?" Tu Shanling replied, "As long as you help a cultivator above the spirit-severing stage of the Tushan family go through a divine punishment or a minor tribulation, you can get a chance to study the Tao runes for a month. You can choose any of the 3 Tao runes of Tron Nebula." Hearing this, Qin Chuan's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "What else?" "Of course, the Tushan family will also provide you with shelter and some resources for your daily cultivation. Brother Qin, you don't have to do anything else for the Tushan family. You have absolute freedom." Speaking of this, Tu Shanling paused for a moment, then continued, "But in this way, Brother Qin, you can't help people from other forces. Of course, you can help your friends and family without any problem." After hearing Tu Shanling's condition, Qin Chuan asked, "Can you change the first condition?" Hearing this, Tu Shanling looked at Qin Chuan with surprise and asked, "Brother Qin, don't you want to study the Tao runes?" Qin Chuan took a deep look at Tu Shanling and answered, "Compared to studying the Tao runes, I prefer studying rune formations. I hope that every time I help a spirit-severing cultivator of the Tushan family go through a minor tribulation or a divine punishment, you can provide me with a level 5 rune formation." If it were before, the conditions for studying the Tao runes might be tempting to Qin Chuan. But now, Qin Chuan had no interest in studying the Tao runes at all. Tao runes were like rune stones. Once they were absorbed by rune swords, they would lose their power and could no longer be studied. If he wanted to continue studying the Tao runes, he would have to wait for thousands of years before the Tao runes could produce power again. Hearing this, Tu Shanling frowned slightly and said to Qin Chuan, "I need to talk to the elder about this. I can't give you an answer right away." Tu Shanling didn't expect that Qin Chuan would put forward such a condition. Qin Chuan, who had become a level 5 rune formation master at such a young age, didn't want to study the Tao runes. This was unexpected. "Of course. I'll stay in Na City for one more day. You can go back and ask the 7th elder first." Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Tu Shanling, "I still say the same thing. If I want to cooperate with you, I'll give priority to your Tushan family." Hearing this, Tu Shanling stood up and said to Qin Chuan, "In this case, I'll take my leave. I'll visit you tomorrow morning. I'll see you out." Qin Chuan stood up and walked Tu Shanling to the door of the hotel. He watched Tu Shanling leave on the shuttle, hoping that Tu Shanling would bring him good news tomorrow morning. Chapter 947. The next morning, Tu Shanling arrived as promised and brought Qin Chuan a piece of good news. The Tushan clan was willing to change their conditions and provide Qin Chuan with a level 5 talisman array. As long as Qin Chuan helped a divine transformation stage cultivator of the Tushan clan overcome a heavenly tribulation or minor tribulation, he would be able to obtain the level 5 talisman array provided by the Tushan clan. If Qin Chuan wanted a battle array, he would have to use up 3 chances. Most importantly, both the auxiliary array and the battle array would be provided randomly. Qin Chuan could not choose by himself. Qin Chuan only briefly considered the new condition of the Tushan clan before agreeing. With his current situation, it was already very good to be able to obtain such a condition. If he continued to bargain with the Tushan clan, he would be ungrateful. After finalizing some details, Qin Chuan and Tu Shanling agreed to visit the Tushan clan as a guest after going to Tron Nebula to comprehend the Tao runes. They would conduct experiments before the cooperation. After sending off the satisfied Tu Shanling, Qin Chuan immediately set off for Rose City. He was prepared to solve some of Lu Zi's worries before leaving. When Qin Chuan arrived at Rose City, it was already 2 days later. Angel's death did not cause too much of an impact on the daily operations of Rose City. However, Lu Zi, who had become the new Grand Duke, was being discussed by many people. Qin Chuan did not walk into the Grand Duke's mansion openly. Instead, he snuck in. However, What made Qin Chuan feel very awkward was that he was discovered by the Grand Duke's mansion's alarm system. Alert! Alert! Intruder discovered. Coordinates B142. Alert! Alert! Intruder discovered. Coordinates B142. Qin Chuan could not help but reveal a look of astonishment when he heard the ear-piercing alarm. He did not expect to be discovered as soon as he entered the Grand Duke's mansion. Whoosh! Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, dozens of figures suddenly appeared around him and surrounded him. Who are you? Why are you trespassing into the Grand Duke's mansion? The leader looked at Qin Chuan with vigilance. It seemed like he was going to attack Qin Chuan at any moment. Qin Chuan immediately raised his hand and replied, "Don't attack me. I'm a good person. I know your new Grand Duke and Sophie." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the man asked suspiciously, "You know Officer Sophie?" Qin Chuan nodded. "That's right, it's Sophie." Qin Chuan laughed out loud after Sophie's words exposed his thoughts. He said, "No, no, no, no. I just felt that it was too troublesome to go through the main entrance and register, so I came in directly." Sophie smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "It's normal for you to have such worries. I don't have any opinions, nor do I have the right to give any opinions. Let's go, I'll take you to see the Grand Duke." Qin Chuan followed Sophie into the depths of the Grand Duke's mansion. He asked Sophie curiously, "Did the Grand Duke's mansion have such an excellent alarm system in the past?" Sophie shook her head and explained, "This is the latest alarm system developed by Tron Nebula's Unju Group. It was bought and installed a few days ago. You're the first person to be caught by this alarm system." Qin Chuan smiled awkwardly. He asked, "What's the highest realm this alarm system can catch?" "The early stage of the Dongshu realm," Sophie replied. Sophie replied, "Even if we were to be caught by the alarm system, we wouldn't be able to defend against a middle Dongshu realm cultivator. That's why we didn't consider the more powerful version." Qin Chuan raised his eyebrows at Sophie's words. He asked, "So you're saying that you have a way to defend against an early Dongshu realm cultivator?" Sophie nodded and said to Qin Chuan, "That's right. When we bought this alarm system, we also bought a defense system. It's installed in the Grand Duke's office. This defense system has the functions of defense, counterattack, and self-repair. It's enough to defend against an early Dongshu realm cultivator's attack. Unfortunately, this defense system is a one-time use item. It will lose its effect after one use." Qin Chuan chuckled and asked, "These two systems must have cost a lot of money, right?" Sophie nodded and replied, "These two systems cost the Grand Duke's mansion nearly 200 years of tax revenue. The cost is indeed not small. But to protect the Grand Duke's safety, it's all worth it." "You're very thoughtful." Qin Chuan grinned and said to Sophie, "You've worked hard. This is what we should do." Sophie smiled and stopped in front of a large door. She said to Qin Chuan, "This is the Grand Duke's office. You can go in. I won't disturb you." Qin Chuan stepped forward and pushed open the door. He walked inside. After passing through a corridor that wasn't too long, he finally saw Lu Zi, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. At this moment, LVZ was wearing a purple dress with a black top hat on her head. She had an outstanding temperament and had the dignified aura of someone in a high position. She sat in front of the table and was meticulously handling official business. Her expression was somewhat solemn. "Put the new official business on the left side of the desk. Prepare a steak for me for lunch. Add a piece of rock sugar to my coffee. Also, what happened to the alarm system just now? Did someone hack into it or is there a problem with the system?" Qin Chuan couldn't help but laugh when he saw Lu Zi say these words without even raising her head. He teased, "Grand Duke, who are you talking to?" Hearing Qin Chuan's familiar voice, Lu Zi immediately raised her head and looked at Qin Chuan. A hint of pleasant surprise appeared on her charming face. She said to Qin Chuan, "You're back." As she spoke, Lu Zi's figure flashed and appeared in front of Qin Chuan. She suddenly threw herself into Qinchuan's arms. Qinchuan hugged Lu Zi and said with a smile, "It's only been a few days since we last met, but you're already a soul formation cultivator. Congratulations. I've been working very hard." Lu Zi looked up at Qinchuan with a smile in her eyes. "Although I know I'm still a long way from catching up to you, at least I can see you're back. Your efforts haven't been in vain." Qinchuan gently stroked Lu Zi's hair and said in a low voice, "But you have to pay attention to the balance between work and rest. Don't tire yourself out." "Qinchuan, there's something I have to talk to you about." Lu Zi looked at Qinchuan with a serious expression. Just as she was about to continue speaking, Qinchuan raised his hand and covered her red lip. "Let a man like me confess." Qinchuan looked at Lu Zi with a gentle gaze and said softly, "I like you. Be my girlfriend." Chapter 948. As the saying goes, people are in high spirits when faced with happy event. After clarifying his and LVZ's feelings, Qinchuan had been very happy recently. However, after receiving the news from Ao Feng, Qinchuan immediately sorted out his mood and embarked on his journey to the center of the Telung Nebula, Telung capital. In the spaceship, Qinchuan and Ao Feng sat opposite each other in the hall, listening carefully to Ao Feng's explanation about comprehending Tao runes. This time, there will be a total of more than 300 talisman array geniuses studying Tao runes together. You can choose from 2 Tao runes, one with the wind attribute and the other with the wood attribute. Which one are you going to choose? Ao Feng looked at Qinchuan. "Actually, I suggest that you choose the wind attribute. The main purpose of comprehending the Tao rune is to learn the battle array. The offensive power of a wind attribute battle array is stronger than that of a wood attribute battle array. However, the choice is still up to you." Qinchuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng, "To be honest, I don't think I can comprehend a Tao rune in a short month. Therefore, I plan to use this month to travel to both ends and take a look at both Tao runes. Then, I will choose the Tao rune that is most suitable for me and wait until I have the chance to comprehend it. What do you think?" Ao Feng wasn't surprised to hear Qinchuan's words because many people in the past would make the same choice as Qinchuan. They would travel to both ends and take a look at both Tao runes. Just like what Qinchuan said, there had never been a person in this world who could comprehend Tao runes in a month. Of course, there's no problem. I think it's a good thing to comprehend Tao runes with a normal mindset. If you start with the mindset of comprehending Tao runes in a month, it won't be a good thing. You're too eager for quick success. Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qinchuan, "I think you have a high probability of comprehending Tao runes, but I estimate that it will take at least a few decades. 1 month is not realistic." Although Ao Feng had always felt that Qinchuan was a genius with peerless talent, some things still depended on the actual situation. The journey from the Sai-Na galaxy to Trong City required them to cross 4 galaxies in the universe. Even with the interstellar portal, it would still take at least half a month. Other than chatting with Ao Feng at the beginning of the journey, Qinchuan spent most of his time cultivating in his bedroom. It was not until half a month later that the spaceship finally arrived at Trong City that Qinchuan came out of his bedroom. "We've arrived at our destination." Otto stood in front of the porthole, pointed at the outside world and said to Qinchuan, "This is the political, economic and cultural center of Tron Nebula, Trong capital." Qinchuan walked to the porthole and looked out. When he saw the huge steel building, he couldn't help but be shocked. "This is Tran's capital?" Ao Feng nodded and said to Qinchuan, "Don't be surprised, this is Tran's capital." Hearing Ao Feng's answer, Qinchuan's eyes flashed with surprise. He really didn't expect Tran's capital to be such a huge steel castle. At a glance, he couldn't see the end of it. Seeing Qinchuan's surprised expression, Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qinchuan, "Actually, everyone is very surprised when they see Tran's capital for the first time. You're already relatively calm. Tron City does not exist on a certain planet, because it itself is built from countless man-made steel planets. The total area of Tron City is almost one-third the size of the Sane galaxy, and the population is more than 100 billion. It is a real metropolis of the universe. Hearing Ao Feng's introduction, Qin Chuan exclaimed, "This is the first time I've seen a city like this. No, this can't be described as a city anymore. This is a steel kingdom. We're about to land. I'll take you to see the scenery of Tran's capital later." Ao Feng smiled and reached out to pat Qin Chuan's shoulder. "Don't be dazzled." When the spaceship slowly landed at the starport, Qin Chuan and Ao Feng left the spaceship and set foot on the land of Tran's capital. Ao Feng and Qin Chuan were both ordinary citizens here, so no one paid special attention to them. Instead, Qin Chuan was very curious about the tourists in the starport. When Qin Chuan was in the Sai Na galaxy, most of the people he saw were humanoids who looked similar to himself. But here, Qin Chuan saw all kinds of strange people. There were 3-meter-tall giants covered in green hair, conjoined people with 2 heads and 4 arms, and there were also strange people without heads whose eyes grew directly on their chests. Ao Feng noticed Qin Chuan's gaze on those people. He chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "That's the green-haired race. His hair is all hair, so he has a very strong defense. The one with 2 heads and 4 arms is the twin race. Everyone in the twin race has 2 minds. It's a very special race. As for the one without a head, this is the first time I've seen it. I guess it's the faceless race." Hearing Ao Feng's introduction, Qin Chuan said with some emotion, "This is the first time I've seen so many races in the universe. This is nothing. When we enter the center of Tran's capital, you'll see even more races." Ao Feng smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Let's go, we'll walk around." Qin Chuan followed behind Ao Feng like a tourist following a tour guide. He was full of curiosity about everything around him. Although Tran's capital was made of steel, it didn't give off a cold feeling. On the spaceship, Ao Feng and Qin Chuan stood in front of the window and pointed to a huge building outside. This is the most famous Unju group in Tran's capital. It's responsible for the research and development of security systems, and also the rental of security personnel. It's said that the top security personnel of the Unju group are at the middle stage of the Dongshu realm. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but stare blankly. He didn't expect that the building in front of him was the headquarters of the Unju group. What's more, the Unju group could provide middle-stage Dongshu realm cultivators as security personnel. Middle-stage Dongshu realm cultivators could run amok in the Sane galaxy, but in Tran's capital, they were just security personnel. Seeing the surprised look on Qin Chuan's face, Ao Feng chuckled and said, "You don't have to be too surprised. Although the Unju group has security guards at the middle stage of the Dongshu realm, it's still expensive to hire them. Thousands of years have passed since the establishment of the Unju group, and only 2 or 3 people can afford to hire security guards at the middle stage of the Dongshu realm. So this is basically just a gimmick." Chapter 949. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan had a look of understanding on his face. Indeed, it was almost impossible to hire a middle-stage Dongshu cultivator as a bodyguard without paying a huge amount of money. However, for Qin Chuan, money was just a worldly possession. If there was a chance, he would like to hire a middle-stage Dongshu cultivator to be Lu Zi's bodyguard. Ao Deng smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "These are just along the way. Today, I'm going to take you to see a big event." When Qin Chuan heard this, he asked curiously, "What grand occasion?" Ao Feng coughed and said to Qin Chuan, "It's the Trump City Super Auction that even I have only attended a few times." The so-called Trump City Super Auction was the highest-level auction held in Trump City. This level of auction was only held once every 100 years. Every time, many priceless treasures would appear in the super auction, and there would even be holy weapons, which were the best things that even overlords in the universe would covet. After Qin Chuan understood the situation of the super auction, his heart was filled with yearning. Although he was currently a pauper and couldn't afford to buy anything, it would be good to go to the super auction to broaden his horizons. This is for you. Ao Feng handed a blue card to Qin Chuan. This is the reward for being the champion of the Sane Galaxy Talisman Array Master Exchange Conference, 10 million star coins. Qin Chuan was shocked to hear Ao Feng's words. He asked, 10 million star coins? So much? Not much, really not much. Ao Feng smiled and said to Qin Chuan, 10 million star coins may be able to buy a lot of things in the Sane Galaxy, but there are very few good things that can be bought in Trump City. If it's in the super auction, you may not even be able to buy a single item. I'm giving you this money for emergency use, so that you won't starve to death in Trump City. Ao Feng wouldn't stay in Trump City for too long. He would leave after a while. At that time, Qin Chuan would be alone in Trump City. If he didn't have any money, it would be difficult for him to move around. Thank you. Qin Chuan was a little moved. You're so considerate. Haha, we're friends. You don't have to be so polite. Ao Feng laughed and said to Qin Chuan, let's go down. The entrance to the super auction is right in front of us. The entrance to the super auction was located in a large hall. The hall occupied a large area, but only those with tickets were eligible to enter. There were reserved seats on the tickets, and the customers could directly teleport to their seat. It was very convenient. Not only that, but the auction organizer would also provide one-on-one service for the customers who were attending the super auction for the first time. If the customers had any questions, they could ask the waiter. This service was completely free of charge, which could be said to be quite good. It took me a lot of effort to get 2 tickets. Although the seats are connected, the location is very ordinary. You'll have to bear with it. Ao Feng handed one of the 2 tickets in his hand to Qin Chuan. Even though he said things like, just make do with it, the expression on his face was exceptionally proud. This was because in a super auction, even the worst tickets were hard to come by. They were priceless even if there was a market for them. Although Qin Chuan was not very knowledgeable, he could still see some clues from Ao Feng's expression. He chuckled and said to Ao Feng, I'm already very happy to be able to participate in the super auction thanks to you. How could I have any other thoughts? The 2 chatted and laughed as they arrived at the ticket inspection area. After the AI system verified the authenticity of the tickets, the 2 were allowed to enter the hall. There were not many people in the hall at this time. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng could choose to teleport to their destination. Before teleporting, Qin Chuan looked around. Finally, his eyes fixed on a tall figure. A trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. The figure looked very familiar. He seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Just as Qin Chuan was recalling where he had seen that figure before, that person had already left the hall through the teleportation array and entered the auction venue. What are you looking at? Ao Feng glanced at Qin Chuan and then at the empty teleportation portal. He asked, Did you meet someone? No. Qin Chuan shook his head and said to Ao Feng, Let's go. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng each stepped onto a teleportation portal. After the portal was activated, Qin Chuan entered the auction site in the blink of an eye and returned to his seat. What a special teleportation portal. It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable at all. It's just like walking normally. Qin Chuan was a little surprised. He had used many teleportation portals in the past, but this was the first time he had such a special experience. However, what surprised Qin Chuan even more was that the auction site was much smaller than he had imagined. It was only about 1,000 square meters in size. Just as Qin Chuan was feeling surprised and puzzled, Ao Feng's words suddenly rang in his ears. Qin Chuan, don't think that the space here is small. This is a very high-end space folding technology. In fact, the space here is more than 1,000,000 times bigger than what you see. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan could not help but ask, space folding technology? Technology? Qin Chuan couldn't help but think of the spatial shield that the black-robed man had released. It seemed that the spatial shield used spatial folding technology. However, compared to the scale of spatial folding technology in front of him, the black-robed man's method was much cruder and more superficial. It's not technology. It's the combination of technology and the power of the law of space. Ao Feng explained to Qin Chuan, in order to achieve the level of the auction site, at least a few late-stage Dongshu realm experts have to continue working together. Qin Chuan looked around curiously and asked, "Where are you?" Ao Feng smiled and explained to Qin Chuan, "I'm in the folded space beside you. You can't see me, but because we're together, we can communicate with each other. If you want to see me, you can ask the staff to adjust it. This way, the two of us can be in the same space." After getting Qin Chuan's approval, the staff immediately adjusted it. Soon, Ao Feng and his seat appeared in front of Qin Chuan. This is really an eye-opener. Qin Chuan looked at Ao Feng and sighed. The law of space is really incomparably mysterious. Ao Feng also sighed. Although the law of space is mysterious, it's nothing compared to the law of time. Unfortunately, there are many practitioners in this world who have mastered the law of space, but almost none of them have mastered the law of time. Chapter 950. The Law of Time. When Ao Feng mentioned the law of time, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What kind of existence is the law of time?" Ao Feng shook his head and replied, "I've never seen anyone master the law of time. However, according to legends, those who master the law of time can reverse time and control a person's life and death. It's extremely miraculous. Reverse time. Control life and death. Just listening to it made one feel incomparably powerful and miraculous. There are countless experts in the universe who want to comprehend the law of time. However, it's a pity that very few people succeed. Even those who succeed only have a superficial understanding of the law of time. They can't be of much use in battle, but even so, it's amazing enough." Ao Feng sighed. "It's a pity that our humanoid race has declined. Otherwise, there might be experts who can master the law of time in this world." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan asked with some doubt, "What does the law of time have to do with the humanoid race?" Ao Feng smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "To be exact, the law of time has something to do with the humanoid race. A long time ago, most of the experts who mastered the law of time in the universe were from the humanoid race. We humanoid race have the bloodline of the humanoid race, so we are naturally more familiar with the law of time. In ancient times, there were some humanoid race who mastered the law of time, but their numbers were extremely small. Ever since the humanoid race disappeared, there were very few people who could master the law of time in the universe. When our humanoid race completely declined, the law of time almost disappeared." After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect that the humanoid race had such a special relationship with the law of time. Didn't this mean that he had a high chance of comprehending the law of time? "Do you know how to comprehend the law of time?" Qin Chuan suppressed his excitement and asked Ao Feng, "What's the price?" Ao Feng was stunned when he heard Qin Chuan's words. He asked with some astonishment, "Do you think that if I knew how to comprehend the law of time, I would still be sitting here?" Hearing Ao Feng's answer, Qin Chuan immediately calmed down. He sighed and said with a wry smile, "I'm thinking too much." "You're not just thinking too much, you're thinking too highly of me." Ao Feng laughed and said to Qin Chuan, "The reason why the law of time is so difficult to comprehend is because the law of time is too profound and complex. It's very difficult for ordinary people to understand it. The other reason is that almost no one knows how to comprehend the law of time. As time passes, the method to comprehend the law of time also passes with time." "What a pity!" Of. Qin Chuan stared for a moment. He didn't think too much about it. Now that he heard Ao Feng's words, he felt that Ao Feng's words were very reasonable. He knew too little about the universe. While Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were chatting, an attendant suddenly appeared in front of them and said, "I'm sorry to disturb the two of you. I've brought you the super auction schedule. If you're interested, you can take a look." Ao Feng's eyes lit up when he heard the attendant. He turned to Qin Chuan and said, "We still want to take a look at the super auction schedule." Qin Chuan was also very interested in the schedule. He also wanted to see what kind of treasures would appear in the super auction. The attendant handed the two schedules to Qin Chuan and Ao Feng. After receiving the schedule, the two couldn't help but look at it. The super auction schedule was divided into 3 parts. The first part was for the elite, the second part was for the epic, and the third part was for the legendary. In the elite part, the first item to be auctioned was a high-grade Dao artifact. Moreover, it was a rare defensive artifact. The starting price was 3 million star coins. When Qin Chuan saw the artifact, he couldn't help but sigh. The starting price of the first item is 3 million star coins. I think that the final price shouldn't be lower than 5 million. You're right. With my money, I can only buy one item. Moreover, it's the cheapest one. But even so, it's still a very good treasure. Ao Feng nodded. Then he turned to Qin Chuan and said, "You're right. Treasures that appear in the super auction are all good. However, only the treasures in the elite part can be auctioned with star coins. The treasures in the epic and legendary parts can't be auctioned with star coins." When Qin Chuan heard this, he immediately turned the schedule to the back. However, what surprised him was that there was no introduction to the treasures in the epic and legendary parts. You don't need to be surprised. With our status, we don't have the qualifications to know the details of the epic and legendary parts in advance. Ao Feng smiled and said, "At the very least, we need to be at the Dongshu stage or have a good seat to know the details of the epic and legendary parts in advance." Upon hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded in understanding. Then, he asked curiously, "What do you need to use for the epic and legendary auctions?" The epic part of the auction uses star stones, which are hard currency in the entire universe. For us cultivators at the spirit severing stage and above, star stones are a commonly used cultivation resource. Therefore, when auctioning high-value treasures, star stones are used as the standard. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, "Ordinary currency might be valuable to ordinary people, but for high-level cultivators, it's just a useless worldly possession." When Qin Chuan heard Ao Feng's words, he was stunned. Then he took out a silver-white stone from his storage ring and asked, "Is this a star stone?" When Ao Feng saw Qin Chuan take out a star stone, he was also stunned. Then he said, "Where did you get this star stone? And it looks like its grade isn't low." When Qin Chuan heard this, he looked at Ao Feng with a subtle gaze. Then he replied, "I encountered some star beasts in the past. I got this after killing them. But there aren't many of them, only a few dozen." Chapter 951. Qin Chuan obtained the star stones from killing Barbarian Wolf in the Air Center. Originally, they were used to power up the Zeus technology glove. Later on, when the Zeus technology gloves gradually became useless, the star stones were saved. If Ao Feng didn't mention the star stones, Qin Chuan would have forgotten that he still had some star stones. After hearing Qin Chuan's explanation, Ao Feng couldn't help but widen his eyes. He looked at Qin Chuan in disbelief and said, "Star beast? You actually encountered a star beast?" Seeing Ao Feng's shocked expression, Qin Chuan was a little confused and asked, "What's wrong? Are star beasts very rare?" The Air Center was often attacked by star beasts. He himself had encountered star beasts several times. He originally thought that star beasts should be a very common creature in the universe, but looking at Ao Feng's expression, it didn't seem to be the case. Of course star beasts are rare. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan in an extremely excited tone. Originally, star beasts were the largest race in the universe. Later on, due to the rise of various races, star beasts were massacred by us. As a result, the number of star beasts rapidly decreased and they disappeared from the universe. Now, the only place where star beasts still exist is the unexplored dark universe. The so-called dark universe was an unexplored universe. It was precisely because there were almost no other races in the universe that it became the resting place of star beasts. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan was very surprised. He didn't expect that star beasts, which were almost everywhere in the banished land, would be rare here. Moreover, he also heard some clues from Ao Feng's words. The banished land should be in the unexplored dark universe. Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan with a strange gaze and asked, "Brother, tell me the truth. How many star beasts did you kill?" Qin Chuan grinned and replied, "More than 100. After hearing Qin Chuan's answer, Ao Feng immediately beat his chest and stamped his feet. His face was filled with heartache and helplessness. After a while, he said to Qin Chuan, "You didn't kill 100 star beasts. You obtained at least 10 epic-grade treasures." Qin Chuan heard this and asked in astonishment, "What do you mean?" In the universe where star beasts are rare, many people sell star beasts as top-grade pet. Every star beast can be sold for at least tens of millions of star beasts. And if it's a star beast, it can be sold. For example, if you capture all these star beasts and sell them, you can definitely become a millionaire with a net worth of billions. But if you kill all these star beasts and get star stones, you'll only get a few hundred star stones. If you use your net worth of billions to buy star stones, you'll get at least a few 100,000 star stones. Seeing Ao Feng shaking his head and sighing, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At that time, he was still in the banished land. How could he have thought of so many things? However, Ao Feng's words reminded him of one thing. Back then, in order to preserve food for the little armored dragon, he still had a lot of corpses of barbaric wolves in his storage ring. I wonder if the corpses of star beasts are valuable? The ones that are kept intact. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng was slightly surprised and asked, "You still have corpses of star beasts? Quickly take them out and let me see." Qin Chuan immediately took out the corpse of a barbarian wolf from his storage ring. When Ao Feng saw the corpse of the barbarian wolf, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He exclaimed, "This is the star beast you killed?" Qin Chuan nodded and asked, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" "What a waste of God's gift! What a waste of God's gift!" Ao Feng wailed. If this was a living star beast, it would definitely be a treasure to be included in this super auction. It could be sold for at least 100,000 star stones. You killed it and only got a single star stone. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan felt a little dizzy. When he thought of the tens of thousands of barbaric wolves led by Man, it was as if he saw a star stone vein running through the universe. "How many of these perfectly preserved corpses do you have?" Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan. "If there are enough of them, can you sell them for a bit of money?" Hearing this, Qin Chuan immediately counted the stock in his storage ring and replied, "There are a total of 60 corpses. Originally, he had more than 100 barbaric wolves' corpses, but during this period of time, many of them were eaten by the armored dragon. Now there were only 60 corpses left. So many. Ao Feng was extremely shocked. Although the dead star beasts aren't worth much, the ones in your hand that look so good can still be made into specimens. They have a certain collection value. I estimate that 60 corpses can be sold for about 300,000 star stones." Hearing this, Qin Chuan asked curiously, "What grade of star stone are you talking about?" Ao Feng explained to Qin Chuan, "Star stones are divided into first grade, second grade, and third grade. I'm talking about third-grade star stones. This is also the standard used by all the major auctions. Second grade and first grade star stones are rarely used for transactions. Generally, they are used by cultivators in the process of cultivation. The one you just took out is at least a second grade star stone, right? Qin Chuan nodded. Although he didn't have many star stones in his hand, most of them were first grade star stones. There were also some second grade star stones, but there were very few third grade star stones. Third grade star stones are very common, and second grade star stones aren't rare. However, first grade star stones are really rare. If you want to exchange them, a first grade star stone can be exchanged for tens of thousands of third grade star stones. However, very few people would exchange them like this. After all, first grade star stones are also considered treasures. They are priceless. Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle gaze and said, "You better keep the high-grade star stones in your hand. Don't exchange them for third-grade star stones." Qin Chuan asked curiously, "Since star beasts are very rare in the universe, how do we get star stones?" Ao Feng explained to Qin Chuan, "The star stones produced by star beasts are generally high-grade star stones. The third-grade star stones that we usually use as high-grade currency exist in the universe in mineral veins. Therefore, they are not rare." Qin Chuan nodded in understanding. Suddenly, he took out 3 second-grade star stones and handed them to Ao Feng. He said to Ao Feng, "Brother Ao has solved my doubts. Take these 3 second-grade star stones as my thanks to Brother Ao. Brother Ao, please don't refuse. Just accept them." Ao Feng looked at the 3 second-grade star stones handed over by Qin Chuan. After a slight hesitation, he reached out and accepted them. He said to Qin Chuan, "Brother Qin, these second-grade star stones are very important cultivation resources for us cultivators. It's really hard for me to refuse your good intentions. Later on, if there is an auction item that you want, I will definitely try my best to help you get it." Chapter 952. When Qin Chuan called the attendant over, the attendant was stunned when she saw the 60 neatly arranged corpses of the barbaric wolves. She had worked in this super auction for so many years, but this was the first time she had seen so many corpses of star beasts. "I wonder if these corpses can participate in this super auction?" Qin Chuan looked at the attendant. "If they can, then take them to the auction." "This is possible, but I need to ask for instructions from my superiors. Please wait a moment." The attendant glanced at Qin Chuan, then immediately turned around and left. Soon after, the attendant returned, and this time, there was an additional manager beside her. The manager also looked at the 60 corpses of the barbaric wolves on the ground after entering the room. After a while, he turned his gaze to Qin Chuan and asked with a subtle tone, "Sir, are you sure you want to auction off these corpses?" Qin Chuan nodded and asked, "What's the price?" The manager immediately replied, "I will divide these corpses into 6 groups for auction. The starting price for each group will be set at 100,000 star stones. What do you think?" The starting price of 100,000 star stones had far exceeded Qin Chuan and Ao Feng's expectations. Qin Chuan quickly agreed and said to the manager, "Then let's do it this way." After receiving Qin Chuan's confirmation, the manager immediately said, "Sir, since you have an item to be auctioned, your seats will automatically be upgraded to VIP rooms. I will arrange for the attendant to bring you to another room. Please wait a moment." After Qin Chuan signed the authorization, the manager took away the 60 corpses of the barbaric wolves. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng also entered the VIP room under the arrangement of the attendant. Compared to their previous room, which was about 100 square meters, the VIP room was at least 1,000 square meters. Moreover, from the seats to the service, everything had been upgraded. The experience was excellent. "This time, I am basking in your glory. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have the chance to come here in my lifetime." Ao Feng looked at the environment in the VIP room and sighed. Those who can come to the VIP room are either rich or powerful. You can be considered as one of them. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng, "With your talent, I believe that you will be able to sit here with your own strength sooner or later." Ao Feng shook his head and sighed. "Unless you become the overlord of the universe, who can be carefree?" Father was at the middle stage of the Dongshu realm, the #1 expert in the Sinai galaxy. Yet, he still died silently. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan sighed. Even a cultivator couldn't see life and death. This was human nature. While Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were chatting, the super auction was finally about to begin. Due to the space folding technology, Qin Chuan and the others were sitting right in front of the auction stage. They could clearly see everything happening on the stage. When a beautiful woman in a tight white dress stepped onto the auction stage, a soft music immediately sounded in the auction venue, causing everyone's mood to involuntarily relax. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am the auctioneer of this super auction, Wheezy. I will conduct the elite and epic auctions for you." Wheezy smiled and said to the crowd, "According to the rules, you can choose to make a sound or use your number to bid. We don't have any restrictions in this regard." In order to ensure the lively atmosphere of the auction, there were very few auctions where people were prohibited from making a sound. Of course, in order to protect the privacy of some customers, the auction hall also allowed people to use their numbers to bid silently. The method of bidding was entirely up to the customer. Without further ado, let's welcome today's first auction item, the high-grade Taoist weapon, Cloud Armor. The starting price is 3 million star coins. Each bid must be at least 100,000 star coins. Following Wheezy's words, an armor that was as soft as a cloud appeared on the stage. It emitted a soft and hazy light. Soon, someone called out the first price. 3 million. 3,100,000. With one bid after another, the atmosphere of the auction hall suddenly became lively. During this auction, almost no one used their numbers to make a silent bid. Everyone was shouting their bids, each more excited than the other. In the end, the price of the cloud armor was fixed at 5,500,000 star coins. It was bought by a mysterious customer in an ordinary seat. Then, Wheezy brought out the second auction item. It was also a high-grade Taoist weapon, but this time it was a saber. The high-grade Taoist weapon, Sky Flame Saber. The starting price is 5 million star coins. Each bid must be at least 100,000 star coins. As the elite auction items were auctioned one after another, the atmosphere of the auction hall became more and more heated. Qin Chuan had been watching the auction with the mentality of watching a good show. He didn't encounter anything he wanted to bid on. Soon, all 99 elite auction items were auctioned. None of them were unsold. The highest price was a set of 10 bottles of Berserker Potion, which was sold at a sky-high price of 200 million star coins. After taking this potion, it could allow a person to unleash 3 times their strength, and it only lasted for a short 5 seconds. At first, Qin Chuan didn't understand why such an ordinary Berserker Potion could be sold at such a high price. When Ao Feng told him that it was a product of the Heavenly Pill Hall and had no side effects, he suddenly understood. Although the effect and duration of this Berserker Potion were somewhat unsatisfactory, the fact that it had no side effects was enough to tempt many people. After the elite auction was over, the epic auction was about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, the first auction item of our epic auction today is a little special. It is divided into 6 groups, and each group has 10 set. At this point, the expression on Wheezy's face became a little subtle. The audience at the auction hall was also very curious. What was the first auction item of this epic auction? There were actually 60 sets. Some of the high-end customers who had seen the auction process before were also a little surprised. Could it be that there was a new auction item cutting the queue? The first auction item in the auction process didn't have 60 set. When the corpses of the 10 barbaric wolves were neatly placed on the auction stage, the audience was a little confused. What did they see? These are the corpses of 10 star beasts, and they are the extremely rare barbaric wolf corpses. They are preserved extremely well. There are a total of 60 corpses, and they are divided into 6 groups for auction. The starting price of each group is 100,000 star stones, and each bid must be at least 5,000 star stones. As Wheezy's voice fell, the auction hall was suddenly filled with gasps. None of them had thought that the first auction item of the epic auction process would be the corpses of star beasts. Moreover, there were 60 of them. Chapter 953. Who did this? It's simply a waste of resources. Too cruel. Who did this? Who would actually kill these cute star beasts? Isn't this too crazy? Someone is actually willing to kill star beasts. And 60 of them at that. As soon as Wheezy's voice fell, the auction venue was immediately filled with curses. Everyone was angrily crusading against the owners of these barbarian wolves' corpses. How great would it be if these star beasts were all alive? How could anyone bear to kill such handsome and domineering star beasts? They were simply inhuman. When Qin Chuan heard these curses, the expression on his face immediately became rather interesting. He really didn't expect that he would attract so many curses because of these barbaric wolves' corpses. It was as if he had done something unforgivable. Ao Feng, who was sitting beside Qin Chuan, couldn't help but reveal a smile when he saw this. He said to Qin Chuan, "It's already very good that they are cursing you here. If you appear in front of them now, do you believe that they won't beat you up?" There's even a group of people at the side clapping their hands and cheering. Moreover, with the style of the super auction, they must have muted all the customers in the ordinary seats. The ones who can still curse you now are at least the customers in the VIP boxes. If not, I'm afraid there will be even more people cursing you. Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but bitterly smile and helplessly said, "At that time, I also didn't know that today's matter would happen. Alas, I can only say that I'm still too young." But don't worry, the super auction still attaches great importance to protecting the privacy of the customers. As long as you don't go out and say that you killed those wolves, others won't find trouble with you. Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "In any case, I won't betray you." Just as Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were chatting, the auction officially began. Although everyone was cursing fiercely, their actions weren't slow at all. In just a short moment, the price of the first set of 10 corpses had reached 150,000 star stones. Qin Chuan was very satisfied with this price. If he calculated it this way, the 6 sets of corpses could be sold for at least 1,000,000 star stones. The 6 sets of barbaric wolf corpses were auctioned off one after another. Every set was sold at a maximum price of 150,000 star stones, and they were sold for a total of 900,000 star stones. Congratulations, congratulations. Brother Qin, you've become rich overnight. Ao Feng enviously said to Qin Chuan, "I'm really envious of your good luck. If Brother Qin encounters another star beast, you must remember to capture it alive." Qin Chuan smiled bitterly and said to Ao Feng, "I met the star beasts by chance and killed them to protect myself." Qin Chuan wasn't lying about this. Back when he was locked up in prison, he had indeed encountered star beasts by chance. He had also killed these star beasts to protect himself. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng chatted happily while Wheezy started the auction for the second item in the epic stage. The second item was an ancient strange stone. No one knew where this strange stone came from, but one thing was for sure. Even an overlord of the universe couldn't damage this strange stone in the slightest. The starting price of this ancient strange stone is 10,000 star stones. Each increment must be at least 1,000 star stones. This was supposed to be the first item in the epic stage, but because Qin Chuan cut the queue, it became the second item. Therefore, the starting price was slightly lower. When they saw this fist-sized ancient stone appear on the auction stage, the others did not have any special reactions. However, Qin Chuan was shocked. This was because he had seen this ancient stone twice in the land of exile. Moreover, he had obtained it both times. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, the runic sword in his mind started buzzing, indicating a strong demand for this ancient strange stone. 10,000, 11,000, 15,000. There were very few bidders for this ancient wondrous stone. Just as everyone thought that the price of this ancient wondrous stone would be raised to 11,000, someone suddenly shouted out a bid of 15,000. That's right, this person was Qin Chuan. After hearing Qin Chuan's bid, Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan in surprise and asked in confusion, "Why are you bidding for this item?" Qin Chuan laughed and said to Ao Feng, "After earning some money, I have to buy something as a souvenir. I think this is the only item in the epic stage that has a collectible value and is relatively cheap, so I want to buy it for fun." After hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although the star stones belonged to Qin Chuan and Qin Chuan was free to spend them however he wanted, it was not worth it to spend 10,000 star stones or even more to buy a collectible. However, as Qin Chuan said, buying a collectible as a souvenir was not a big deal. 16,000. 20,000. When someone raised the price again, Qin Chuan showed his determination to win this ancient strange stone. He successfully dissuaded the other bidders and won the ancient strange stone for 20,000 star stones. After Huizi made the final decision, Qin Chuan let out a long sigh of relief. He wasn't afraid that others would continue to raise the price, but he was worried that if others saw that he was determined to win this ancient strange stone, they might have other intentions. After winning the ancient strange stone, Qin Chuan asked Ao Feng curiously, "Does this ancient strange stone appear in auctions often?" Ao Feng replied, "Although it's not very common, it's not rare either. At least, I have seen this ancient strange stone appear in auctions 4 or 5 times. Many people are willing to spend a little money to buy it as a collectible. Some are the size of a fist, some are the size of a thumb, and the shape is not fixed." After hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but feel a little moved. Didn't this mean that he could buy this ancient strange stone often? It was just that he didn't know what effect this ancient strange stone had on the runic sword. When Qin Chuan thought of this, the ancient strange stone in his brain immediately responded. This ancient strange stone was actually the same as the runic stone. It could repair the runic sword, but there were no runes engraved on it, so the effect was weaker. It was roughly equivalent to a Dao rune. In other words, it could repair about 1% of the damage done to the runic sword. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qin Chuan's eyes immediately lit up. The price of this kind of ancient stone was not considered expensive. If he could work on both sides, wouldn't he be able to repair the runic sword even faster? Of course, Qin Chuan was only thinking about it. After all, he couldn't participate in the auction every day, and he couldn't look for Dao runes everywhere. Therefore, the matter of repairing the runic sword was still a long way off. Chapter 954. The epic auction continued. Every item that appeared on the stage aroused the great interest of everyone present. Especially when a translucent shield appeared on the auction stage, the atmosphere of the scene suddenly reached a climax. This shield is called the Empty Shield. It contains a certain amount of space law power. Its defensive capability is extremely strong. Even an early-stage Dongshu realm cultivator can't damage the Empty Shield in the slightest. Huizi smiled slightly and said to everyone, "But this isn't the main point. The main point is that the Empty Shield is a semi-sage tool. As long as it is properly nurtured, it has a great possibility of being promoted to a sage tool." Semi-sage tool. Hearing Huizi's introduction, the customers at the scene suddenly exclaimed. Qin Chuan was even more shocked. A treasure of this level actually appeared in the epic auction. What kind of amazing treasure would appear in the legendary auction later? The starting price of the Empty Shield is 10 million star stones. Each bid must not be less than 1,000,000 star stones. Just hearing the starting price of the empty shield, Qin completely gave up on the idea of the empty shield. With the star stones he didn't even have enough to raise the price once, let alone bid. However, although Qin couldn't afford the empty shield, there were a lot of people present who could afford it. Soon, the price of the empty shield was pushed to the sky. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. In just a moment, the price of the empty shield had reached 20 million star stones. And this was just the beginning. As more and more people joined the bidding, the price of the empty shield also soared sharply. This is really crazy. Qin sighed and said, "Previously, I thought I was already a rich man with nearly 1,000,000 star stones. But compared to these people who are bidding, my star stones are really nothing." Just as Qin was speaking, the price of the empty shield had soared to an exaggerated 40 million star stones. And this wasn't the end. There were still many people bidding. Ao Feng sighed after hearing this. Then, he looked at Qin and said, "It's mainly because a treasure like the empty shield is too rare. Every time it appears, it will inevitably lead to a fierce competition. This is a semi-sage tool that contains the power of space laws. It's much more precious than some ordinary sage tools. Once this empty shield is nurtured into a true holy weapon, it will be difficult for anyone to break through its defense unless they are universe overlords." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin asked curiously, "Then how do we nurture the empty shield into a sacred item? You're putting me in a difficult position by asking me this question. This is something that only Dongshu stage cultivators can do." Ao Feng chuckled. "I don't know how to operate it, but everyone has their own way. 80 million. This old man, Sunset, is determined to obtain this shield. I hope that everyone will yield." When this customer, who called himself Sunset, shouted these words, he successfully silenced the auction. Everyone seemed to be afraid of this Sunset. Unexpectedly, no one made another bid. Seeing this, Qin asked curiously, "Who is this Sunset?" Ao Feng whispered to Qin, "This Sunset is not simple. He is one of the top 10 experts in our Tai Lang Nebula. People call him Venerable Sunset. He is a powerful cultivator in the late stage of Dongshu realm." Hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin couldn't help but have a subtle look in his eyes. So this Sunset was a late Dongshu stage cultivator. No wonder everyone was so afraid of him and didn't dare to make another bid. He was clearly using his power to oppress others. In fact, Sundown has broken the rules of the auction house. But there's no other way. Sundown is too strong. Even if he broke the rules of the auction house, no one would dare to say a word about it. Ao Feng sighed. This is the benefit of being strong. Just as Qin and Ao Feng were talking, Huizi finally dropped the hammer. In the end, the empty shield was won by Sunset at the high price of 80 million star stones. Although this price was a little low, it couldn't be helped. Let us warmly congratulate Sunset Knight for winning the empty shield. Even though she was dissatisfied, Huizi still had to smile and express her most sincere congratulations to Sunset. At the same time, she hoped that Sunset would not continue to use his power to oppress others and destroy the next auction. Now, let's continue with the next auction item, a scripture. Huizi smiled and said to everyone, "This scripture came from the ruins of the human race. Most of the words on it are broken, but it still has a certain reference value and research value. The starting price of this scripture is 15 million star stones. Each bid must not be less than 1,000,000 star stones." Hearing Huizi's introduction, Qin was a little surprised and said, "It's just a scripture. How can it be so valuable?" "Brother Qin, sometimes I really want to know where you came from. You don't know anything at all." Ao Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said to Qin, "This scripture may mean nothing to ordinary people, but to some powerful cultivators who want to comprehend the time law, it is extremely precious. Do you understand now? Qin Chuan was slightly taken aback. He asked, "Do you mean that comprehending the time law might be comprehended by comprehending the scripture?" "It's not just a possibility, it's a very high probability, because this kind of thing has happened before," Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan. "Previously, there were two universe overlords who comprehended some superficial knowledge of the time law. The reason why they could do so was that they each had a scripture from the ruins of the human race." After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan finally understood the meaning of this scripture. At the same time, the price of this scripture had reached a shocking 50 million star stones, and the momentum seemed to be even fiercer than the previous empty shield. 100 million. Finally, someone directly made a shocking bid of 100 million star stones, and the person who made this bid was Sunset, who had won the empty shield. This time, Sunset didn't use his power to suppress others. Instead, he used his wealth to suppress others. When someone tried to make a bid of 101 million star stones, Sunset didn't hesitate to raise the price to a shocking 110 million star stones. Finally, no one else made a bid, and the scripture was once again in Sunset's possession. Congratulations, Sunset Knight, for winning this scripture from the ruins of the human race at a price of 110 million star stones. Let's give you a round of applause once again, Huizi said to the crowd with a smile. My task has been completed. Next, the auction will be continued by the organizer of this auction, Tushan Hao, the fourth elder of the Tushan family. After saying this, Huizi bowed to the front and then walked down the stage. Tushan Hao, the fourth elder of the Tushan family? When Qin Chuan heard this name, a subtle look flashed across his eyes. Chapter 955. After Huizi's figure completely disappeared, it didn't take long for a middle-aged man in a white robe to slowly ascend the auction stage. This middle-aged man looked somewhat similar to Tushan Yu, whom Qin Chuan had seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Tushan Hao, the fourth elder of the Tushan family. Today, I am honored to be here to conduct the legendary auction for everyone. If there is anything I have done wrong, please forgive me. After saying this, Tushan Hao cupped his hands slightly towards the crowd, appearing quite elegant. However, Qin Chuan thought that Tushan Hao's humble attitude and his words were not directed towards everyone, but towards the strong ones, such as Venerable Sunset. Qin Chuan looked at Tushan Hao and asked Ao Feng, "How strong is this Tushan Hao?" Hearing this, Ao Feng answered, "The middle Dongshu stage isn't the strongest in the Tushan family. As far as I know, the Tushan family has at least 2 late Dongshu stage cultivators. Otherwise, the Tushan family wouldn't be able to sit firmly on the throne of the number 1 family in the Trong star cloud." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan nodded slightly and did not ask any more questions. At this time, the legendary auction was about to begin. There are a total of 5 items in the legendary auction. Now, it is time for the first item. Tushan Hao said to the crowd, "The first item is a sacred item. Octagonal pearl. Sacred item. Octagonal pearl." As soon as Tushan Hao finished speaking, a light golden pearl the size of a football appeared on the auction stage, emitting a strange light. What a big deal! Ao Feng could not help but sigh when he saw the octagonal pearl. I did not expect the first item of the legendary auction to be a sacred item. Although it is only a standard sacred item, it is still amazing enough. Qin Chuan was still amazed at the big deal of the super auction. Hearing Ao Feng's words, he could not help but be slightly surprised. He asked with some doubts, "Standard sacred item? Are there many octagonal pearls in this world?" Ao Feng nodded, then he explained to Qin Chuan, "That's right, there are indeed a lot of octagonal pearls in this world. But even if there are a lot, there wouldn't be more than 10 of them." Without waiting for Qin Chuan to ask again, Ao Feng continued, The reason for this is because the octagonal bead is an extremely advanced technological product. In other words, the octagonal bead has a production process and blueprint. It's not a unique sacred tool that can be created by imagination. In theory, as long as there are sufficient materials, the octagonal bead can be created without limit. After hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He had seen some standard products in the past, but this was the first time he had heard that there were standard products among the sacred tools. Just as Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were talking, the auction for the octagonal bead had already begun. However, there was no starting price, and the atmosphere in the hall was quiet for a while. Qin Chuan was a little confused about this, but Ao Feng, who had long been used to his ignorance, quickly gave him an answer. The legendary auction process is different from the previous two processes. It does not support the measurement of currency or star stones. Instead, it supports the exchange of items. Simply put, you have to take out something that the owner of the octagonal bead is interested in to exchange for it. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, although the octagonal bead is a sacred tool, it is only one of the most common types of sacred tools. Not many people have a need for it. Qin Chuan asked curiously, then what is the function of the octagonal bead? The function of the octagonal bead is to monitor everything. You can think of it as a top-notch alarm system. Normally, only powerful cultivators who have founded their own sects or large families like the Tushan family will use the octagonal bead. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, the octagonal bead doesn't have any offensive power, but even a universe overlord won't be able to hide under the surveillance of the octagonal bead. Hearing Ao Feng's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded knowingly. It turned out that the octagonal bead had such a magical function. It might be of little value to ordinary cultivators, but to some rich and powerful families, it was quite useful. At this moment, Tushan Hao, who was standing on the auction stage, announced the item that the owner of the octagonal bead wanted to exchange for, the longevity grass. Although the longevity grass was called grass, it wasn't grass. It was a kind of magic medicine that could prolong one's life. Directly swallowing the longevity grass could prolong one's life by 100 years. If one could find a master alchemist to refine the longevity grass, one could get 4 to 5 bottles of the longevity grass, each of which could prolong one's life by 100 years. Both the longevity grass and the longevity grass were extremely precious treasures in the universe. They were irresistibly tempting to some cultivators who were nearing the end of their lifespans. Obviously, the owner of the octagonal bead should be a cultivator who was nearing the end of his lifespan. After a moment of silence, someone said blandly, I don't have the longevity grass, but I do have a bottle of longevity grass. I can add some other things to the deal. Hearing that, Tushan Hao shook his head and responded, This Mr. told me that he only wants the longevity grass. He doesn't want anything else. Hearing Tushan Hao's words, the auction house became quiet again. Although the octagonal bead was a sacred item, it wasn't rare. However, the longevity grass was a real rarity. It was rarely seen outside. Even if someone had it, they wouldn't be willing to trade it. After a long silence, Tushan Hao frowned slightly and asked, Is there no one willing to trade? Just as Tushan Hao's voice faded, someone suddenly said, I don't have the longevity grass, but I have a longevity pill from the ruins of the human race. It can prolong one's life by 300 years. Hearing this person's words, the scene suddenly became restless. Many people had heard of the name of the longevity pill. This thing was a rare treasure in ancient times. Ancient human beings were good at concocting pills. Our current pill concocting skills are based on the ancient humans' pill concocting skills. The main ingredient of the longevity pill is the longevity grass. Ao Feng said to Qin Chuan, with our current pill concocting skills, we can only concoct 4 to 5 bottles of longevity pills with 1 longevity grass. However, in the ancient times, one longevity grass was enough to concoct tens of longevity pills. In my opinion, that pill concocting skill was a real immortal skill. Unfortunately, it has been lost for a long time. Very few people in the world still know about pill concocting skills, and no one can concoct top-grade pills. Hearing this, Qinchuan's eyes flashed with a subtle light. He asked, "Didn't you find any more books about pill concocting skills in the ruins of the human race?" "Of course we did, but finding them is one thing, learning them is another." Ao Feng chuckled and said to Qinchuan, "There are some things that other races can't learn. Only the real ancient human beings can learn them." Chapter 956. Let us congratulate this friend of mine for acquiring the octagonal bead with a longevity pill. As Tushan Hao's voice faded, the auction for the first item of the legendary process, the octagonal bead, came to an end. In terms of value, the octagonal bead was worth at least 200 million starstones, which was quite amazing. Then, the second item was placed on the auction stage. Now, we are going to auction the second item of the legendary process. Tushan Hao lifted the red silk covering the plate and showed a dark purple, fist-sized piece of metal in front of the crowd. He said loudly, "According to the legends, when a god fell, his blood dyed the earth red. That was how the Godfall iron was born. It is the cornerstone of a divine weapon, and the beginning of a divine weapon." Hearing Tushan Hao's introduction, the crowd looked at the Godfall iron on the plate and exclaimed, "Godfall iron! It's Godfall iron! I can't believe that the meteorite iron will appear in this super auction. Someone is actually willing to put such a treasure up for auction. Is he crazy?" Hearing the crowd's discussion about the Godfall iron, Qinchuan couldn't help but look at Ao Feng. Ao Feng understood and immediately said to Qinchuan, "The Godfall iron is a very special material, mainly used to make divine weapons. It's extremely rare. Even 10 octagonal beads added together might not be worth as much as one piece of Godfall iron." When Qinchuan heard this, he asked curiously, "Since this divine meteorite metal is so precious, why would anyone be willing to take it out for auction?" "To be honest, I'm very curious about that too." Ao Feng was confused as well. The Godfall iron was an extremely rare treasure for anyone. He couldn't figure out why that person would want to auction it. While Qinchuan and Ao Feng were talking, Tushan Hao announced the item that the person wanted to trade the Godfall iron for. It was an offensive divine weapon. Among the many divine weapons, most of them didn't have offensive properties. Most of them could only play a supporting role. Defensive divine weapons were already the best among the divine weapons and were relatively rare. Offensive divine weapons were even rarer. Although the Godfall iron was a rare treasure, it was still not enough to trade for an offensive divine weapon. Therefore, after Tushan Hao's announcement, the auction site fell silent again. Although the Godfall iron is a good item, an offensive sacred artifact is the best of the best, a treasure among treasures. If it is not for the fact that they want to forge a sacred artifact and coincidentally need the Godfall iron, I don't think anyone would be willing to trade with him. Ao Feng looked at the fist-sized Godfall iron and said to Qinchuan, "I think it wouldn't be a problem for him to trade it for a defensive divine weapon." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qinchuan was lost in thought while looking at the Godfall iron. However, the runic sword in his mind sent him a message again. The runic sword wanted the Godfall iron. "You want the Godfall iron?" After receiving the message from the runic sword, Qinchuan was slightly stunned. He asked the runic sword in confusion, "Does the Godfall iron have a restorative effect on you?" The runic sword responded to Qinchuan again. Although the Godfall iron didn't have restorative effect on him, it could increase his strength. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qinchuan sighed helplessly. However, the other party specifically stated that he wants to use an offensive sacred artifact to conduct the transaction. let alone an offensive sacred artifact. I don't even have the most ordinary octagonal beads. Qin also wanted to get the Godfall iron for the runic sword, but he didn't have enough money. He couldn't afford it at all. Facing Qin's helplessness, the runic sword remained silent for a while and responded again. Not for the time being. After receiving the latest response from the runic sword, Qin let out a sigh of relief. If the runic sword insisted on getting the Godfall iron, he really didn't know what to do. After a long period of silence, Tushan Hao coughed softly and said, "The owner of the Godfall iron just contacted me. He told me that he has changed his mind. He wants to trade the Godfall iron for a unique divine weapon. Everyone can take out the divine weapons you are willing to trade. He will choose the one he wants the most." After a short period of silence, someone finally took out a support-type saint artifact. This item is called the Soul Cleansing Jade. It has the effect of cleansing the mind and calming the soul. For powerful cultivators like us, it can eliminate nightmares. For formation masters, it can strengthen their mental strength and allow their mental strength to recover faster. However, these effects are only secondary. The most important thing is that it can be used to break all illusions. As long as you wear it, you can ensure that you are always in a clear-headed state, unaffected by any external factors. After hearing this person's introduction, everyone felt that the soul-cleansing jade was a good treasure. However, compared to the value of the Godfall iron, it was not worth it. But soon, someone took out a second divine weapon. This divine weapon of mine is called the wind drum. As long as you beat this drum, all the wind within a radius of 10,000 li will be under your control. You can order the wind to do anything. You can also attack. However, its attack power is only equivalent to the full power attack of an early Dongshu stage cultivator. But the wind wall formed by this wind drum is not weak. It can withstand the attack of a late Dongshu stage cultivator. For powerful cultivators at the Dongshu stage, the wind drum's attack power was equivalent to nothing. As for its defensive power, it was not particularly outstanding. However, the wind drum's advantage was that it was all-round. Among ordinary divine weapons, it was not bad. Aside from those two, no one else brought out a sacred artifact to trade. Firstly, unique sacred artifacts were rare treasures. They would have miraculous effects in various aspects. Very few people would be willing to bring out the sacred artifacts they were used to trade. Secondly, the average person would only possess one sacred artifact. Very few would possess a second sacred artifact. Thus, those who could bring out a sacred artifact to trade for the Godfall iron ores would possess at least two sacred artifacts. Additionally, the sacred artifacts that were brought out were of little value, such as the soul-cleansing jade pendant. This soul-cleansing jade is a good divine weapon. To a talisman formation master like Qin, the soul clarity jade pendant could be said to be a rather good saint artifact. However, it was only a thought in his mind. The treasures in his possession were either far more valuable than the soul clarity jade pendant or far less valuable, so it was utterly impossible for him to make a trade with it. As far as he was concerned, if the owner of the God Meteor Iron wasn't a talisman formation master, then the owner would probably choose the more comprehensive saint artifact, Wind Drum. Chapter 957. Unexpectedly and reasonably, the owner of the God Meteorite Iron gave up on the deal, which meant the God Meteorite Iron stream would be auctioned off. The Spirit Cleansing Jade and the Wind Drum were both good holy weapons, but they were not as good as the God Meteorite Iron, which could be used as the core of a holy weapon, or even used to make a godly weapon. Therefore, people understood why the owner of the God Meteorite Iron gave up on the deal. No one thought it was inappropriate. After all, there were all kinds of problems in bartering, which were difficult to solve. Unfortunately, the God Meteorite Iron stream will be auctioned off. Now, let's move on to the third item. Tushan Hao grinned and said to the others, The third auction item is a bit special, because it comes from a relic of the spirit creature kind, one of the top 10 ancient spirit creatures. It's a treasure left by the ancient spirit creatures. Hearing Tushan Hao, everyone was curious and expectant. What would the treasures left by the ancient spirit beasts look like? Under the gazes of the public, Tushan Hao lifted the red silk covering the third item and showed it to the public. The third item was a milky white bone, which seemed to be the spine of some kind of monster. This vertebra looked ordinary, but everyone could clearly sense the astonishing power contained within it. Once it exploded, it would definitely be able to destroy the heavens and earth. According to the research of the masters of the super auction, it's basically confirmed that this spine came from a tiger demon, at least at the overlord level of the universe. If we can find some secrets of the demon race from it, we might be able to gain great benefits. People couldn't help but exclaim when they heard Tushan Hao's introduction. None of them thought that this spine came from a tiger demon at the overlord level of the universe. The spine of such a powerful demon was definitely a priceless treasure. Facing the others' excitement, Tushan Hao chuckled and said to the others, "The owner of this spine wants to trade for a level 6 magic formation with this spine. No auxiliary magic formation. A 6th level charm array, no auxiliary array." It meant that the owner wanted a 6th level battle array. A 6th level auxiliary array wasn't something rare. Every big force had some collections, but a 6th level battle array was extremely rare. It was as valuable as a holy weapon with offensive power. Therefore, when this condition was proposed, the auction site fell into silence again. The atmosphere was very strange. After a long while, someone suddenly said slowly, "This spine of a tiger demon at the overlord level of the universe is a rare treasure. Although 6th level battle arrays are rare, in terms of value, this spine must be more valuable than a 6th level battle array. Why is this friend willing to trade this spine for a 6th level battle array?" In my opinion, this friend must have studied this spine for a long time but couldn't find any secrets of the demon race. That's why he took it out for trade. As soon as this person finished speaking, the crowd started to think. What this person said made sense. This spine seemed to be a treasure, but maybe it was just a piece of chicken rib. It was tasteless, but it would be a pity to throw it away. It would be better to trade it for something useful, such as a 6th level battle array. Everyone, just now the owner of this spine told me that he hasn't studied this spine. He is a charm array master, and he studies charm arrays every day. He has no time or interest to study this kind of thing. If it weren't for the fact that he urgently wants a 6th level battle array, he wouldn't have taken this treasure out for trade. Tushan Hao said to the crowd, "This friend has already sworn to the great Tao. What he said is true." Hearing Tushan Hao's words, the auction quieted down again. Since the owner of the spine dared to swear to the great Tao, it meant that he was telling the truth. In this case, the spine was indeed a rare treasure. If anyone could discover some secrets of the demon race or the spiritual will left by a universe overlord from it, they might be rewarded handsomely. Finally, someone couldn't help but put forward his offer. "Although I don't have a 6th level battle array, I know 2 6th level auxiliary arrays. I'm willing to trade them. I also have 2 6th level auxiliary arrays. I'm willing to trade them for this spine. I have 3 6th level auxiliary arrays, and all of them are quite unique. I'm sure this friend will be satisfied." Very quickly, 3 customers who were interested in trading spines raised their conditions. Without exception, they all chose to trade in auxiliary formations. None of them could take out a level 6 battle formation. However, Tushan Hao shook his head and said regretfully, "I'm sorry, everyone. This friend is only willing to trade for a 6th level battle array. He doesn't need anything else." Hearing Tushan Hao's reply, the people who had proposed their terms earlier felt a little regretful and helpless. Although a 6th level auxiliary array was rare, there were always ways to get it. However, even a universe overlord might not have a 6th-level battle array, let alone people like them. What a pity. This spine is good stuff, Aofeng said with a sigh. Aofeng sighed and said, however, a Tier 6 battle array is also a good thing. In our Trong star cloud, even a Tier 5 battle array is extremely rare, let alone a Tier 6 battle array. I reckon that if this person wants to obtain a Tier 6 battle array, he would have to go to the Heaven Star Cluster to trade. However, it's not easy to go to the Celestial Cluster from Tron Nebula. Qin Chuan was also very interested in this spine. However, as Aofeng had said, he couldn't even take out a 5th-level battle array, let alone a 6th-level battle array, which was more advanced and precious. Just when everyone thought that the spine was going to be sold off, someone suddenly said, I have a battle array here, but it's an incomplete rank 6 battle array. If this friend is interested, we can have a private chat. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. This was because the person who had spoken was Sunset Knight, who had repeatedly bid today. Everyone was curious as to whether the Sunset Sage would be able to get what he wanted and obtain the vertebrae from the trade. Soon, under Tushan Hao's arrangement, Sunset Venerable had a short private chat with the owner of the spine. After the private chat, the two sides finally decided to make this deal. Let us congratulate Venerable Sunset for obtaining another treasure. Tushan Hao laughed and said to the crowd, this is the 3rd treasure Sunset Knight has obtained in this super auction. No wonder you are one of the top 10 great beings in Tron Nebula. Chapter 958. As expected of the Sunset Venerable, his foundation is too solid. Aofeng was very envious. If he could have the strength and foundation of the Sunset Knight, he wouldn't have to be a spectator here. Qin Chuan could understand Aofeng's feelings, but he didn't envy the Sunset Knight. Qin Chuan believed that with his talent and luck, he could reach the same height as the Sunset Knight sooner or later, and even surpass him. All he needed was time. Aofeng then said to Qin Chuan, now that the legendary items have appeared, the Holy Octagonal Pearl, the Meteorite Iron, and the Spine of the Universe Overlord Tiger Demon, I wonder what the last 2 treasures will be. Since they are placed at the end, they must be the best. Qin Chuan was also curious. Soon, Tushan Hao satisfied his curiosity and presented the final item to the audience. Looking at the huge object that was about 3 meters tall, everyone's face revealed a hint of curiosity. What exactly was this thing? How could it be so huge? Ladies and gentlemen, the origin of this treasure is also not simple. It is made by the Celestial Cluster's master Hao Te. While speaking, Tushan Hao had already lifted the red silk cloth. A silver-gray enormous battle armor showed up in front of everyone's eyes. Seeing this battle armor, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be stunned. Ever since he advanced to the nascent soul stage, he rarely used battle armor in battle. After that, he rarely saw people using battle armor in battle. Today, he suddenly saw battle armor in this super auction. He was really not used to it. It's a battle armor made by Master Hao Te. While Qin Chuan was still in a daze, Aofeng, who was sitting beside him, was so excited that he was about to jump up. Seeing this, Qin Chuan was puzzled. Could it be that high-level cultivators also need battle armors? Seeing Qin Chuan's confusion, Aofeng explained to Qin Chuan, normal battle armors don't have any power boost for high-level cultivators, but a battle armor made by Master Hao Te is different. Qin Chuan was puzzled. How is it different? Aofeng turned to look at Qin Chuan and said with a serious expression, the battle armor forged by Master Hao Te is comparable to an offensive sacred artifact. Offensive holy weapons are rare, but Master Hao Te can make one at any time as long as he is in a good mood. Do you understand? This time, Qin Chuan was really shocked. He didn't expect this battle armor to be comparable to an offensive holy weapon. This was completely different from the battle armor he knew. While Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were talking, the others were going crazy when they saw the battle armor made by Master Hao Te. This battle armor could even be the finale item in an auction in the Celestial Cluster. Who would have thought that it would appear in a small place like Tron Nebula? It was unbelievable. Everyone, please calm down. Please listen to this friend's conditions. Tushan Hao looked at the crowd and said in a subtle tone, "This friend needs some blood." The blood of ancient humans. Hearing Tushan Hao's conditions, the crowd calmed down in an instant, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. Although a battle armor made by a Master Hao Te was extremely rare, it was nothing compared to the blood of ancient humans. Could it be that this friend is deliberately making fun of us? Blood of ancient humans? Ancient humans have been extinct for hundreds of thousands of years. Where do you want us to find blood of ancient humans? Even if we kill all the living humans in the world and purify their blood, we may not be able to get pure blood of ancient humans. The person who said this was Sunset Venerable. When he saw this battlesuit, he had made up his mind to exchange for it at all costs. However, when he heard the other party's conditions, he was immediately enraged. You want to exchange for human blood? This was purely making fun of them. Sunset Knight was furious, and the others felt the same way. Now, even in the human ruins in the hands of ancient races, they may not be able to find blood of ancient humans, let alone in the hands of these people. Although they were all overlords in Tron Nebula, they were just ordinary existences in the entire universe. How could they possibly have such a treasure as blood of ancient humans? In my opinion, this friend is deliberately showing off to us. A battle armor made by Master Hao Te, even universe overlords may not have it. It is indeed a good thing to show off. I wonder who this friend is. How could he have such a bad taste? Great beings from various forces were mocking and ridiculing the owner of the battle armor. Qin Chuan was full of curiosity. He wanted to know what this person was going to do with the blood of ancient humans. Facing the crowd's anger, Tushan Hao felt helpless. He had predicted that something like this would happen. However, because it was a deal proposed by a senior in the clan, he couldn't persuade them otherwise. So, he could only let it be. Now, he was having a headache. He wanted to know how to deal with this. If you don't want to trade, then I will announce that this battle armor is not being auctioned, Tushan Hao Te said with a smile. Although Tushan Hao was smiling, he felt helpless in his heart. However, he wasn't the only one who felt helpless. The others also felt helpless in their hearts. No one liked the feeling of watching a treasure slip away right in front of their eyes. Soon, Tushan Hao ordered people to take the battle armor away. If it continued to be displayed here, it would only attract hatred. Now we are going to auction our most important treasure. This treasure is also strange and has an amazing origin, Tushan Hao said to the crowd. The most important thing is the quota. Quota? Hearing Tushan Hao's words, the others showed confusion on their faces. What kind of treasure could be auctioned as the most precious treasure of the super auction? Not long ago, our Tushan family found an ancient ruin in a mysterious space. After a simple exploration, we found that this ancient ruin belonged to the humankind. Now, our Tushan family is inviting heroes from all over the world. We would like to invite you to explore this ancient human ruin with us. Hearing Tushan Hao, the others were all shocked. Tushan family people had found an ancient human historical site, and they were willing to share it with the others to explore together. Facing the crowd's shock, Tushan Hao chuckled and continued, however, the quota is limited. Therefore, only friends with enough sincerity can get a quota to explore the ancient human ruin. The treasures you find in the ruin will belong to you. Our Tushan family will never ask for them. Chapter 959. Hearing Tushan Hao's words, people in the auction hall instantly became excited. Those unexplored ancient human ruins must be full of opportunities. As long as they could gain some benefits from those ancient human ruins, they might be able to benefit themselves for the rest of their lives. Facing such a rare opportunity, no one would want to miss it. I wonder what price we have to pay to get an entrance ticket? Finally, someone couldn't help but ask Tushan how. What price did they have to pay to get this limited opportunity to enter ancient human ruins? Facing this question, Tushan Hao smiled faintly and responded, "As long as you are willing to pay over 1,000,000 star stones, you can get an entrance ticket and join this grand event. However, we don't accept star stones, only treasures." Hearing Tushan Hao's words, everyone sank into contemplation. They were trying to figure out which treasures they had that were worth more than 1,000,000 star stones, which they didn't need, could be used to exchange for entrance tickets. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng's excitement instantly cooled down, because they didn't have any treasures that were worth more than 1,000,000 star stones, and they didn't need any treasures that could be used to exchange for entrance tickets. This meant that the two of them basically had no chance to participate in this grand event. You can see a mountain of treasures, but you can't enter it. Ao Feng gave a long sigh and said helplessly, "You still have a chance, but I don't have a chance at all." Hearing this, Qin Chuan gave a bitter smile, shook his head and responded, "I don't have a chance. Don't forget that I only have 900,000 star stones. After deducting the service fee, I have even less star stones. Besides, Tushan family doesn't accept star stones. How can I possibly have a chance?" "I'm not talking about what you're thinking." Ao Feng glanced at Qin Chuan and continued, "I remember that Tushan family is trying to recruit you, right? If you tell Tushan family that you want to explore this ancient human ruin, I think they won't refuse you." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan paused slightly. He didn't think about this, but if he asked Tushan Yu about this, he would owe Tushan Yu a big favor. While Qin Chuan was struggling with this, Tushan Hao abruptly announced a new condition. "Ladies and gentlemen, what I said earlier is only for the ordinary friends of our Tushan family. As for those who are sitting in the VIP rooms and above, you can enter the ancient human ruins for free without paying anything." Tushan Hao chuckled and responded blandly, "This is how our Tushan family treats our guests. If you don't like it, please forgive us." Following Tushan Hao's voice, Sunset responded first. He sounded quite satisfied as he said, "Thank you, Tushan family, for your kindness. Thank you." Following Sunset's words, more and more people expressed their gratitude to Tushan family. Since these people could sit in the VIP rooms, they were surely people with high status in Tron Nebula. Asking them to exchange 1,000,000 star stones worth of treasures for a ticket in front of so many people would be a bit shameful. However, Tushan Hao's new condition solved this problem perfectly. Therefore, it wasn't a big deal for these people to thank Tushan family. While these people were feeling satisfied, Qin Chuan and Ao Feng were stunned by this pie that fell from the sky. They never thought that they would be able to enter the ancient human ruins and explore, but unexpectedly, they would unexpectedly get a ticket. "Qin Chuan, you're truly my lucky star." Ao Feng laughed and said to Qin Chuan, "If it weren't for you auctioning off the barbarian wolf's corpse, we wouldn't have been able to enter this VIP box, and we wouldn't have been able to obtain this admission ticket. Thank you very much." Hearing Ao Feng's words, Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know that such a good thing would happen at the end of this super auction. Soon, the staff of the super auction came to the VIP room to register. Qin Chuan and Ao Feng each received a jade token. When the time came, they would be able to enter the ancient human ruins with these tokens. The Tushan family only recognized tokens, not people. Qin Chuan carefully put away the jade tablet. Then, he put away the 800,000 star stones that the staff had sent over, as well as the ancient strange stone that he had won. After that, he left the super auction site with Ao Feng. Originally, I planned to return to the sane galaxy directly after participating in this super auction. But now, because of the exploration of the ancient human ruins, I have to change my plan. I have to stay here until I finish exploring the ancient human ruins. Ao Feng looked at Qin Chuan, but there are still about 2 months before the time set by the Tushan family. I have to find something to do. Qin Chuan was going to study the Tao Rune soon. It would take a whole month, so the waiting time wasn't too long. However, Ao Feng was different. He had nothing to do at all. He couldn't just stay in the hotel for 2 months. In the high-cost environment of Trump City, even Ao Feng, the eldest prince of the sane galaxy, would feel the pinch if he stayed in a hotel for 2 months. You can find a way to solve it yourself. I will gather at the observatory tomorrow, and then set off to study the Tao Rune. Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Ao Feng, "You'd better cultivate hard during this period of time and prepare more things. If you die in the ancient human ruins, it would be too much of a loss." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ao Feng rolled his eyes and said to Qin Chuan, "Are you cursing me? Don't worry, I won't die so easily." "Then I wish you good luck." Qin Chuan looked at Ao Feng and said, "See you then. Then I also wish you can study the Tao Rune within a month." Ao Feng laughed and said, "I'll be waiting for you to use the level 5 battle formation to kill everyone." After some teasing, the two parted ways at the entrance of the super auction. Qin Chuan was going to the hotels prepared by the powerful forces of Tron Nebula for the winners of the various galaxies, while Ao Feng was going to find a hotel by himself. After parting ways with Ao Feng, Qin Chuan directly sent the ancient stone to the runic sword. The runic sword unceremoniously began to devour the magical power contained in the ancient stone. Soon, the magical power on the ancient stone gradually disappeared. The originally indestructible ancient stone was now like an ordinary stone that could be easily crushed. While Qin Chuan was heading to the observatory hotel, he did not know that he had already attracted the attention of the various forces of Tron Nebula. Many people were secretly watching his every move. Chapter 960. Hello, may I ask if this is the hotel prepared for the winner of the Talisman Formation Master Exchange? Qin Chuan stood at the front desk of the hotel and gazed at the plump attendant at the front desk. He felt extremely strange when he saw the single eye on the attendant's face. "Sir, please show me your identification." The single-eyed attendant revealed a smile and displayed a mouthful of sharp teeth in front of Qin Chuan. "You can stay in this hotel for free as long as your identification is verified." Qin Chuan felt extremely uncomfortable when he heard the gentle tone and saw the slightly ferocious appearance of the attendant before him. Truthfully speaking, he was still slightly unaccustomed to the feeling of interacting with other races in the universe. He still needed to get used to it. Qin Chuan took out the identification that Ao Feng had prepared for him. After verification, he obtained his room card, 8081. After returning to the hotel room, Qin Chuan originally wanted to rest for a while before starting to cultivate. However, his sharp intuition told him that he seemed to have been targeted by someone. Qin Chuan walked around the hotel room twice before suddenly removing the 4 hidden cameras installed in every corner of the hotel. He looked at the cameras in his hand and frowned. Someone actually installed cameras in such a high-end hotel? While Qin Chuan was pondering these questions, those people who were observing the participants through the cameras expressed their dissatisfaction with Qin Chuan's actions. Could it be that no one told this fellow the rules before he came? Who told him to remove the cameras? What a sharp little fellow. I like him very much. This is a pretty good little fellow. His performance will probably be even better once he knows what the rules are. Alright, all of you shut up. Over 100 outstanding Talisman Formation Masters are placed in front of all of you. Why pay so much attention to a little fellow? Along with this last voice, the crowd's discussion about Qin Chuan gradually quieted down. Everything returned to tranquility. However, Qin Chuan was completely unaware of this. In the holy cluster, far away from the celestial cluster, on a huge planet full of huge caves, a huge snow-white demon worm suddenly drilled out of a cave, opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, and let out a sharp roar. As the demonic insect roared, dozens of figures suddenly appeared around the demonic insect and respectfully knelt on one knee to express their respect and submission. "Respected Mr. Devil, what happened to you?" A tall figure looked at the angry devil bug in front of him and was puzzled. Nothing had happened, so why did the devil bug suddenly become angry? Roar. The devil bug turned its head and roared at the tall figure, as if venting its dissatisfaction. A large amount of dark green mucus was sprayed out and covered the tall figure's body, but the tall figure did not seem to feel anything and remained motionless. "I understand. One of your apostles died outside, right?" The tall figure looked at the devil bug and responded, "I will send someone to investigate this matter and give you a satisfactory answer." Hearing the tall figure's words, the devil bug screamed again and then retreated into the cave. The tall figure slowly turned around and looked at the people around him. He said indifferently, "Go and find out which apostle died outside recently. Inform the local action team to find out the cause of the apostle's death. I don't need to say more about what to do." "Yes, Mr. Consul." When the crowd dispersed, the tall figure called Mr. Consul stood alone at the edge of the cave. Under the slightly dim light, his single leg was particularly eye-catching. On the morning of the second day after Qin Chuan arrived at the observatory hotel, the representatives of the various powers arrived at the observatory hotel one after another. They were prepared to lead everyone to comprehend the Tao Rune. At this moment, Qin Chuan had finally met the talisman array masters of the other galaxies. Amongst the numerous peculiar races of the universe, Qin Chuan, the representative of the humanoid race, was particularly striking. There are really all kinds of races. Qin Chuan looked at the surrounding universe races and whispered, "None of them look like humans. I wonder what their aesthetic standards are like." Just as Qin Chuan was whispering to himself, representatives of various forces slowly came to the hall. Among these representatives, except for the seventh elder of the Tushan clan, Tushan Yu, Qin Chuan did not recognize any of them. However, from the symbols on their chests, these forces were from the metropolis government of Tron Nebula, the Unju Group, and the Skywalk Federation. Among the various forces of Tron Nebula, the metropolis government and the Tushan clan were tied for first place. Below them were the Skywalk Federation jointly established by various universe races and the richest Unju Group. The reason why no other forces were here today was that the other forces had to wait for these forces to pick the good seedlings that they liked before they could enter to select people. This was an unspoken rule that had been in place for many years, and no force could break it. As the representative of the metropolis government, Hai Feng appeared to be somewhat arrogant. He raised his chin as if he was looking at people with his nostrils. "You little brats, if any of you are willing to join our metropolis government and work for us, you can come and register with me now. The quota is limited, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get it first. It will depend on your performance in the next month." Hearing Hai Feng's words, many talisman array masters who were interested in joining the metropolis government went to Hai Feng's side to register. The other forces, on the other hand, were indifferent. If they had any seedlings that they liked, they would naturally communicate with them in private. They would never cast a net as wide as Hai Feng. However, there was a special tacit understanding between Qin Chuan and Tushan Yu. After glancing at each other, the two of them nodded slightly and did not communicate much. However, Qin Chuan knew that if he dared to show interest in the other forces, Tushan Yu's attitude toward him would immediately change. After Hai Feng registered the names of the talisman array masters, everyone could finally set off for the location of the Tao runes. The Tushan clan and the Unju group would lead people to the location of the wind attribute Dao runes, while the Metropolis government and the Skywalk Federation would lead people to the location of the wood attribute Dao runes. The talisman array masters of each galaxy were free to make their choice. No matter which Dao rune they chose, they could change their choice at any time after arriving at their destination. Qin Chuan naturally chose to go to the location of the wood attribute Dao runes first because in his opinion, there would be fewer talisman array masters who would choose the wood attribute Dao runes. It would be more convenient for him to do things. After making his choice, Qin Chuan directly boarded the spaceship at the observatory and set off for the location of the wood attribute Dao runes, the Great Jupiter System. Chapter 961. The Damu Galaxy was located to the west of capital of Trump. It was not far from capital of Trump, and it only took 4 days to reach by taking a spaceship through 6 interstellar portals. The reason why the Damu Galaxy was named the Damu Galaxy was not only because most of the people living here were from the Damu race, but also because every planet here was covered in green plants. Looking from the universe, the entire planet was covered in green and full of vitality. Qin Chuan's destination was a place called Sunflower Planet in the Damu Galaxy. The wood attribute Dao rune was on Sunflower Planet. Dear passengers, this flight is about to arrive at the Damu Galaxy's Sunflower Planet. Please prepare for landing. When he heard the broadcast, Qin Chuan began to pack his luggage. In fact, there was nothing much to pack, just his talisman pen and disc array. When Qin Chuan finished packing and came to the hall, there were already more than 30 people in the hall. These people were like Qin Chuan, they all chose to comprehend the wood attribute Dao rune on Sunflower Planet. As for whether these people would choose to go to the Hurricane Galaxy to comprehend the wind attribute Dao rune, Qin Chuan did not know. Everyone, follow behind us. Be careful and don't get lost. If any accidents happen because of your mistakes, we won't be responsible. As the representative of the Metropolis government, Hai Feng's tone had always been very arrogant. Aside from those who had registered in his notebook, he didn't care about the life and death of others. As for the representative of the Heavenly Federation, Hart, he maintained his silence. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't open his mouth to say anything. Everyone had some understanding of Hai Feng's attitude, so no one took Hai Feng's words to heart. They came here to comprehend Dao runes, not for sightseeing, so the probability of getting lost was relatively small. When the spaceship slowly landed on Sunflower Planet, everyone could see the scenery on Sunflower Planet clearly. The reason why Sunflower Planet was called Sunflower Planet was because it was full of huge sunflowers. Each sunflower was at least 100 meters tall, and any sunflower fruit was the size of a person. These sunflower fruits tasted very good. They were originally a specialty of the Damu Galaxy, but because of the appearance of Dao runes here, Sunflower Planet was completely controlled by the various forces of Tron Nebula. It was difficult for outsiders to come to Sunflower Planet, so this specialty gradually disappeared. Buzz! When the cabin door opened, Hai Feng and Hart took the lead and walked out, followed by Qin Chuan and the others. When they walked out of the spaceship, Qin Chuan immediately breathed in an extremely refreshing fragrance. This was the natural fragrance of sunflowers, which was very refreshing. Don't look left and right. Let's go. Just as Qin Chuan and the others were looking around curiously, Hai Feng did not give them any time to enjoy the scenery and walked straight ahead. Seeing this, Qin Chuan and the others could only helplessly follow. After all, Hai Feng had said before that he would not be responsible if any of them fell behind, so they had to be careful. On the road ahead where the wood Dao runes were located, Qin Chuan discovered that there were many guards near them. Moreover, these guards were wearing different clothes. These guards should belong to different forces. Not only were they guarding the Dao runes together, but they were also supervising each other. After about 2 hours, Qin Chuan suddenly sensed an extremely powerful aura in front of him. This aura was not emitted by a creature, but an aura that belonged to the Tao of heaven and earth. Almost subconsciously, Qin Chuan thought of the Tao runes. In this place, only the Tao runes could release such a powerful aura. Not long after Qin Chuan sensed the Tao runes aura, the others also sensed the Tao runes aura. Their faces could not help but reveal a look of anticipation and curiosity. They could not wait to see what kind of existence the Tao runes were. Stop! Just as everyone was getting closer and closer to the Tao runes, Hai Feng suddenly shouted for them to stop. Everyone stopped and looked at Hai Feng. They did not understand why Hai Feng suddenly asked them to stop. Before you comprehend the Tao runes, there are some rules that I still need to explain to you. First, you are not allowed to come within 1,000 meters of the Tao runes. You can only comprehend it from 1,000 meters away. If anyone dares to come within 1,000 meters, sorry, but you will be killed without mercy. Second, everyone is only allowed to comprehend the Tao runes for 10 hours a day. Once you exceed this time, you must leave. Don't ask why. Those who violate the rules will also be killed without mercy. Third, do not release spiritual energy towards the Tao runes. Moreover, do not make any offensive moves. Once discovered, you will be killed without mercy. Hai Feng continuously told everyone the rules of killing without mercy, causing everyone's expressions to become solemn. In the process of comprehending the Tao rune, no one could guarantee that they wouldn't do something out of the ordinary unconsciously. If they accidentally violated the rules and were directly killed on the spot, then it would be too much of a loss. If there are no more questions, then let's continue forward. Hai Feng glanced at everyone, then continued forward. He led everyone into a 10,000-meter radius of the Tao runes. It was also at this moment that everyone finally saw the Tao runes' appearance. Originally, Qin Chuan thought that the Tao runes would be some kind of strange word or symbol, just like ordinary runes. However, when he saw the enormous sunflower that emitted a hazy light green glow, he could not help but be stunned. The Tao runes were actually sunflowers? This sunflower is the Tao runes. It is called the Sunflower Tao. Hai Feng said to everyone, all of you are free to move about now. So long as you abide by the rules, then no one will disturb all of you. If you have any questions, you can ask the guards closest to you. It's best not to disturb me if there's nothing important. As soon as Hai Feng finished speaking, everyone impatiently ran towards the area closest to the Tao runes. However, they quickly noticed that the area closest to the Tao runes was practically filled, and many people were silently comprehending the Tao runes. These people that had arrived early weren't the victors of the Talisman Formation Master Exchange of the various galaxies, and they were the clansmen or honorary elders of the various powers. Qin Chuan glanced at the situation before him, and then he casually found an empty space over 2,000 meters away from the Tao runes and sat down. After that, he started to communicate with the runic sword in his mind and asked curiously, "We're over 2,000 meters away from the Tao runes now. Can I help you at this distance?" The runic sword gave a response to Qin Chuan's question. If he wanted to absorb the energy of the Tao runes, then Qin Chuan had to be within 100 meters of the Tao runes. Chapter 962. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qin Chuan couldn't help but frown. According to Hai Feng's previous rules, he would be killed on the spot if he came within a kilometer of the sunflower path, let alone within 100 meters. According to the runic sword, I have to come within 100 meters of the sunflower path to help it absorb the energy of the sunflower path to repair the sword. However, I have no way of getting within 100 meters of the sunflower path. Is there any way to do this? After thinking for a moment, Qin Chuan finally decided to ask for some information before doing anything else. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan stood up and walked towards the guard, who seemed to be the most cunning and greedy. The guard Qinchuan chose was called Douben. He was a member of the Sky Travel Union and came from the Yellow Wind clan. When Qinchuan approached Douben, Douben said to Qinchuan with an impatient expression, "If you have any questions, ask the other guards. I don't have time." Hearing Douben's words, Qinchuan didn't leave. He chuckled and took out a small bag from his storage ring and handed it to Douben. He said in a low voice, "Brother, this is a small token of my appreciation." Seeing Qinchuan hand over the bag, Douben's eyes immediately lit up. He coughed lightly and pretended to be calm as he reached out and took the bag. Then, he carefully opened it and took a look. When he saw the dozen or so third-grade star stones in the bag, he immediately showed a satisfied smile. He then said to Qinchuan, "Kid, if you have any questions, just ask." Hearing this, Qinchuan smiled and asked Douben, "I don't have any special questions. I'm just curious about where the rules come from. Why can't we come within a kilometer of the sunflower path?" Hearing Qinchuan's question, Douben smiled and replied, "I thought you wanted to ask something. So this is what you want to ask. The reason why we don't let you come within a kilometer of the sunflower path is for your own good. In the past, many people got too close to the sunflower path and suffered chi deviation, causing their minds to become disordered and caused quite a disturbance. Later on, there was a rule that states that you can't come within a kilometer of the sunflower path. Once you get too close to the sunflower path, you will run the risk of chi deviation. In order to prevent you from causing trouble, we can only kill you in advance." After hearing Douben's explanation, Qinchuan's face couldn't help but reveal a look of understanding. No wonder there was such a rule. It turned out that comprehending the sunflower path was quite risky. Douben smiled and said to Qinchuan, in fact, if you observe carefully, you will discover that most people meditate within a kilometer of the sunflower path. Very few people meditate within a kilometer of the sunflower path. Only newcomers like you would foolishly go so close. Just watch, it won't be long before those people have problems and have no choice but to retreat. The distance you chose is quite good. It's suitable for you to progress step by step. Unfortunately, you only have a month, so you won't be able to comprehend anything." Qinchuan nodded and was about to ask the next question when Douben grinned and said, "I've already answered one of your questions. We're even now." Hearing Douben's words, Qinchuan instantly understood Douben's meaning. If he wanted to continue asking questions, he would have to continue giving Douben star stones. Qinchuan wasn't afraid of Douben being greedy. He was afraid that Douben wouldn't be greedy. After Douben expressed his attitude, he immediately handed over another bag of star stones. Douben's face immediately bloomed with a smile. He was very satisfied with the second bag of star stones that Qinchuan handed over. He said indifferently, "All right, you can continue asking questions." Qinchuan immediately asked curiously, "Is there any way to get within 100 meters of the sunflower path?" Hearing Qinchuan's question, Douben's expression immediately became vigilant. He asked, "What are you planning to do? I'm warning you, don't mess around." "Of course I don't dare mess around. There are so many guards here. Any one of them can kill me. I'm just curious." Qinchuan chuckled and said to Douben, "Could it be that after this rule was established, no one can get within 100 meters of the sunflower path?" Douben glanced at Qinchuan and replied, "Of course there are people who can get within 100 meters of the sunflower path. However, you can't compare to those people." When Qinchuan heard Douben's answer, he immediately felt that there was hope. He quickly asked, "What does this mean?" Douben laughed and said to Qinchuan, "This question is classified. It's another price." When he heard Douben's words and saw the greedy expression on his face, Qinchuan really wanted to punch this guy in the face. "Brother, you're breaking the rules." Although Qinchuan was disgusted by Douben's greed, in order to get the answer he wanted, he had no choice but to take out a new bag of star stones. This time, he didn't immediately hand it over to Doben. Instead, he revealed a pained expression as if he was reluctant to part with it. He was still hesitating whether he should continue asking. When Doben saw this, he knew that Qinchuan probably didn't have much money left. He reached out his hand and took the star stones from Qinchuan's hand without any trace of politeness. Before Qinchuan could speak, Doben said, "Since this rule was established, only Dongshu Stage Almighty Cultivators and Tier 6 Talisman Formation Masters are qualified to enter within 1,000 meters of the Sunflower Path. No one else has the chance to enter." When he heard Doben's answer, Qinchuan couldn't help but frown slightly. He asked somewhat unwillingly, "Other than that, no one else has the chance?" Doben said without hesitation, "Other than that, no one else has the chance. However, if you want to comprehend the Tao Rune at a close distance, you can go to the Heavenly Wind Path in the Hurricane Galaxy. There are no such rules there. You'd better behave yourself here." After saying this, Doben asked Qinchuan somewhat expectantly, "Do you have any other questions?" When Qinchuan heard this, he forced a smile and asked, "Can it be free?" When Doben heard this, his expression immediately changed. He turned his head and didn't want to continue talking to Qinchuan. When Qinchuan saw this, he cursed Doben in his heart for being greedy. He turned around and left. "I spent dozens of third-grade star stones, but the information I got was basically useless." Qinchuan sat on the ground and looked at the sunflower path that was 2,000 meters away. He didn't have any interest in comprehending it. Right now, his mind was filled with thoughts of how to get within 100 meters of the sunflower path. He couldn't wait until he advanced to the Dongshu stage in the future, right? After thinking for a while, Qinchuan suddenly narrowed his eyes and muttered in a low voice, "If I cause some trouble here, can I take advantage of the chaos to sneak within 100 meters of the sunflower path?" When he thought of this, Qinchuan's eyes gradually lit up. Chapter 963. On the top floor of a high-class office building, a beautiful girl in a black uniform was sitting on the edge of the rooftop. Her legs were dangling outside, swinging casually. She looked down at the steel city below, chewing gum in her mouth non-stop. "Venerable, there's news from the clan." A black figure suddenly appeared behind the girl and respectfully knelt on the ground, reporting the news from afar. Hearing the black figure's words, the girl said indifferently, "Speak." The black figure immediately replied, "Envoy Oman is dead. The clan wants us to investigate this matter thoroughly and give them a reasonable explanation." The young girl raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a smile, "I was wondering where that guy went to enjoy himself." "So he went to the 9 Underworld. Reply to the clan that I will send someone to investigate this matter and give the clan a satisfactory answer." "Yes." The black figure accepted the order and left. The girl slowly stood up and stood on the edge of the rooftop. She stretched her waist, showing off her perfect figure incisively and vividly, but it was a pity that no one could appreciate this beautiful scene. "I really haven't moved for many years. I don't know which old guy didn't want to live anymore and killed that idiot Oman. But it doesn't matter. When I find you, I will definitely make you suffer." Amidst the unrestrained laughter, the girl's figure flashed and the rooftop returned to normal. Qinchuan, who was far away in the Great Wood Galaxy, was unaware of this. Great Wood Galaxy, Sunflower Planet. This was Qinchuan's second day here. After the first day of adaptation, most people had entered a normal state of comprehension. However, Qinchuan still didn't intend to start comprehending the sunflower path. He was still thinking about how to get within 100 meters of the sunflower path without anyone noticing. This movement needs to be big enough to draw enough people away. It also needs to buy me enough time. There are too many factors. Qinchuan frowned and pondered. If he wanted to get within 100 meters of the sunflower path without any problems, there were too many problems to consider. If he couldn't solve them one by one, there was a high chance that his operation would fail. And if his plan failed, what awaited him was death. As Qin Chuan was pondering these questions, Sunflower Planet suddenly shook violently. Although it was only a brief tremor, it was enough to wake everyone up from their meditative state. Looks of shock appeared on their faces. What happened just now? It looks like an earthquake. Everyone's gazes curiously scanned their surroundings. They were all curious as to what had caused that tremor. At this moment, Hai Feng's figure suddenly appeared in front of everyone. When they saw Hai Feng's gloomy face, the noisy crowd immediately quieted down. Don't quarrel. Forget about what happened just now and continue with your comprehension. When everyone heard Hai Feng's words, a subtle expression appeared on their faces. They couldn't understand what the tremors had to do with Hai Feng. Why did Hai Feng's expression become so ugly? However, before they could figure this out, the ground actually started to tremble once more. Bastards, there's no end to these fellows. Hai Feng roared, turned around, and flew off into the distance. When everyone saw Hai Feng leave, they immediately started to whisper again. They all wanted to know what was going on. At this moment, Qin Chuan was already quietly walking towards Dou Ben, who was standing not too far away. He felt that Dou Ben would definitely know what was going on. Just as Qin Chuan was walking towards Dou Ben also noticed Qin Chuan. He chuckled at Qin Chuan, then raised his hand and made a gesture of collecting money. When Qin Chuan saw this, he immediately took out a small bag from his storage ring. He said to Dou Ben, "This is all I have." When Dou Ben saw Qin Chuan take out a small bag, he frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he still accepted it. As the saying goes, the size of a fly is also meat. Being able to earn a little extra star stones was already very good. He didn't mind having too much. You must be here to ask what was going on with that earthquake just now, right? Dou Ben smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "This kind of thing happens every once in a while. This is the resistance of the Sunflower Planet's native." Sunflower Planet's natives? When Qin Chuan heard this, his eyes lit up. He curiously asked, "What's going on?" Dou Ben lightly coughed and said to Qin Chuan, "To put it simply, Sunflower Planet was originally inhabited by some natives of the Bigwood tribe. Before the Sunflower Path was discovered, they had always worshipped it. After the Sunflower Path was discovered, our various forces immediately organized to occupy Sunflower Planet. The natives believed that we were blaspheming their god, so naturally, they resisted with all their might. After we killed some of them, the natives fled to the underground of Sunflower Planet. Because we weren't familiar with Sunflower Planet's terrain, and because the underground terrain was complex, we blocked the entrance to the underground and imprisoned the natives. But who would have thought that the natives would have other entrances and exits? They've been engaging in guerrilla warfare with us. From time to time, they would even cause a large earthquake to interfere with our comprehension of the Sunflower Path." Hearing Dou Ben's explanation, Qin Chuan's face showed a look of understanding. Then he asked, "So the earthquake just now was caused by the natives? Their purpose was to interfere with our comprehension of the Sunflower Path. Senior Hai Feng was so angry because of these natives?" Dou Ben nodded and replied, "You're right. At this time, Mr. Haida should be looking for the natives to kill. If anyone provokes Mr. Haida, even if they don't die, they'll still lose a layer of skin." After understanding the whole story, Qin Chuan's mind began to become active. He wanted to create chaos, and the natives of Sunflower Planet happened to be the best at creating chaos. If he could cooperate with those natives from the inside and outside, perhaps he could succeed. Thinking of this, Qin Chuan looked at Dou Ben and said, "Senior, thank you for your explanation. Goodbye." Seeing Qin Chuan shake his head, Dou Ben smiled at Qin Chuan and said, "There's no need to be polite with me. If you have any questions in the future, you're welcome to look for me at any time." As long as there's a gift, it's fine. Hearing Doben's words, Qinchuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If it weren't for Doben's greedy and timid nature, he wouldn't have wasted so much effort on Doben. At this time, Qinchuan had returned to being alone. Now, he needed to consider how to contact the natives of Sunflower Planet and how to convince them of his sincerity in cooperating. Chapter 964. Just as Qinchuan was thinking about how to get in touch with the natives of Sunflower Planet, the earth trembled for the third time. This time, it was even more violent than the previous two. Less than 100 meters away from Qinchuan, the ground suddenly split open, and dozens of figures that looked like sunflowers jumped out. They shouted loudly and launched a fierce attack on the surrounding people. Seeing this scene, Qinchuan's eyes lit up. He was still worrying about how to get in touch with the natives of Sunflower Planet. Who would have thought that they would deliver themselves to his doorstep? However, from the looks of it, the natives of Sunflower Planet had no intention of communicating with them. They were clearly here to destroy them. Bang. A green seed suddenly exploded beside Qinchuan, releasing a green smoke that spread out in all directions. The smell of the smoke was extremely pungent, and it smelled like a combination of smoke and tear gas. Even deity transformation cultivators would not be able to withstand it for too long. Qinchuan was just about to charge out of the smoke when a hand suddenly reached out from behind and hit Qinchuan. Qinchuan felt a wave of dizziness, and he quickly lost consciousness. When Qinchuan woke up, he opened his eyes and saw a light green cave. Sunflowers grew in the cave, but the strange thing was that these sunflowers were very small, only 2 meters tall. Just as Qinchuan was thinking about this, a sunflower closest to him suddenly turned its head and looked at him with a pair of green eyes. At this moment, Qinchuan suddenly realized that these 2-meter-tall sunflowers were not flowers, but natives of Sunflower Planet. Jiligulu, the natives of Sunflower Planet, spoke a string of words that Qinchuan could not understand at all. Qinchuan forced a smile and was about to take out his photon computer to translate when the natives suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm, looking at him with a vigilant gaze. Qinchuan saw this and knew that the natives were worried that he would do something dangerous. He tried his best to show a friendly smile and said in the universal common language, "I don't mean any harm. I just want to use my photon computer to translate your words and communicate with you." Although the natives of Sunflower Planet did not speak the universal common language, he could understand them. He shook his head at Qinchuan, then made a throat-slitting gesture, indicating that Qinchuan should not act rashly. This also made Qinchuan realize that the natives of Sunflower Planet did not have much goodwill for him. If he rashly did something that made the natives feel dangerous, Qinchuan might really kill him. Qinchuan calmed down. He planned to wait patiently for a while, waiting for the right time to make his move. When Qinchuan swept his gaze towards the surroundings, he noticed that there were many other talisman formation masters who had been captured like him. Moreover, they were basically all newcomers that had just arrived here with him. At this moment, most of them were still unconscious and hadn't regained consciousness. Just as Qinchuan was looking around, a group of Sunflower Planet natives suddenly came into the cave. The aura of these natives was much stronger than the ones around Qinchuan, and they were all over 3 meters tall. "Wake them up." To Qinchuan's surprise, these newcomers could actually speak the universal common language. This made Qinchuan very happy. When he communicated with them later, he would not need to rely on the photon computer to translate. This was really too convenient. Following the order of the leader of the natives, the young natives in the surroundings immediately woke everyone up. After they woke up and saw their surroundings, not only did they not panic, but they even hooted at the leader of the natives. "You better let us go immediately. Otherwise, when our army arrives, you won't even have a place to stay. You will all die." Yes, let us go immediately and send us back to the surface. This is your only way out. Hearing these people's shouts, Qin Chuan could not help but feel a headache. What was a pig teammate? This was a pig teammate. You are in other people's territory and are their captive. Can't you keep a low profile? Being so high profile will get you killed. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, the leader of the natives pointed at the one who hooted first and ordered, "Kill him." Following the leader's order, the young natives in the surroundings immediately took action. Seeing this scene, the arrogant look on the face of the one who hooted immediately turned into panic. He hurriedly said, "What are you doing? You can't." Poochie. Before he could finish his words, the natives in the surroundings had already twisted his head off and tossed it to the side. Seeing this scene, everyone seemed to have their throats locked and could not make a single sound. The few who hooted with the natives were even more terrified, afraid that their heads would be twisted off like this. "My name is Gouda, I am the leader of the resistance army of Sunflower Planet." The leader of the natives looked around at everyone. "I am also the natives you call. To us, you are invaders, bad people who destroyed our home. I am already being extremely lenient by not killing you immediately. Therefore, you better keep quiet and don't try to provoke me." Hearing Gouda's words, everyone looked at Gouda. At this moment, there was no longer any arrogance in their eyes, only fear and nervousness. "The reason why we captured you today is because we hope to use you to exchange for the captive," Gouda said to everyone. "Your leader has captured our warriors, and we need you to exchange for them. Therefore, before this exchange is completed, you better not do anything improper. Also, if your leader kills our warriors, you will be killed as well." When everyone heard Gouda's words, their expressions became extremely solemn. The leader that Gouda mentioned should be Haifeng. Based on Haifeng's character, he might have already killed the captives of the resistance army to vent his anger. As for the lives of these people, Haifeng wouldn't care at all. After saying this, Gouda ordered the people around him, "Lock these captives up separately to prevent them from colluding and causing trouble. If anyone is found to be trying to do anything improper, there is no need to report it. Immediately kill them." Just as Gouda was about to turn around and leave, his heart trembled slightly. He slowly turned around and looked at Qin Chuan. Facing Qin Chuan's sincere and friendly gaze, he frowned slightly. "Let's go." Qin Chuan turned around and walked out of the cave. Qin Chuan didn't do anything else and allowed the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army to take him to another place to imprison him. Chapter 965. Clang. Qin Chuan sat in a small wooden cage and watched calmly as the other party tied up the door of the cage with vines. It was as though he wasn't a captive, but a spectator. One day went by and Qin Chuan's surroundings were so quiet that it was as though not a single sound could be heard. Not even the sound of the wind could be heard. However, Qin Chuan did not mind it. He simply sat calmly within the cage and cultivated. It was as though he was in seclusion. Qin Chuan knew very well that there must be someone watching his every move in the dark. The more anxious and flustered he was, the less likely the other party would want to see him. On the contrary, the more stable and calm he appeared, the higher the possibility of the other party seeing him. On the third day, Qin Chuan finally received his first visitor. However, this visitor had no intention of communicating with him. He only untied the vines and dragged Qin Chuan out of the cage. He then violently brought Qin Chuan to a spacious hall. There weren't many people in the hall. Other than Gouda, there were a few people who stood beside Gouda that day. They looked at Qin Chuan curiously. They were curiously sizing up Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan was also sizing them up. After a while, Qin Chuan took the initiative to break the silence in the hall. "Hello, friends from the resistance army. I'm Qin Chuan." Upon hearing Qin Chuan's words, Gouda snorted and said to Qin Chuan, Humanoid, you told me that you wanted to cooperate with us? Qin Chuan nodded and said to Gouda, that's right. I do want to cooperate with you. Nonsense. Do you think I'll believe your words? Before Qin Chuan could finish, he was rudely interrupted. Gouda stared sharply at Qin Chuan and said in a deep voice, do you think I don't know that you're lying to me because you want to live? Upon hearing Gouda's words, Qin Chuan didn't give any explanation. He simply replied, I swear to the heavens that I sincerely want to cooperate with the resistance army of Sunflower Planet. If what I said is false, let my soul be destroyed immediately. Gouda didn't expect Qin Chuan to swear so straightforwardly. He looked at Qin Chuan in surprise and asked, do you really want to cooperate with us? Seeing the change in Gouda's attitude, Qin Chuan laughed and said, it seems that no matter where you are in the universe, swearing is always the best way to gain trust. Upon hearing Qin Chuan's words, Gouda stared deeply at Qin Chuan and replied, no cultivator would swear so casually unless they don't want to live anymore. Since you're still alive, it means that you're telling the truth. For cultivators, swearing was absolutely not something that could be done casually. Once an oath was made, it had to be kept. If it was broken, the punishment of the oath would definitely come true. For thousands of years, no one had been able to escape the punishment, not even the overlords of the universe. Therefore, this was why Qin Chuan swore without any explanation. It was because this was the best explanation. So can I sit down and talk now? Qin Chuan looked at Gouda. I sincerely want to help you. Of course, I also have some selfish motives. This is the truth, and I have to be honest with you. Qin Chuan's attitude had won Qin Chuan's trust and favor. Therefore, someone quickly arranged a seat for Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan's seat was very high, so he could sit down and look at Gouda at the same level. Qin Chuan liked this feeling very much. I can feel your sincerity, so we can talk about other things now. For example, what do you plan to do? Gouda looked at Qin Chuan. What can we gain from this cooperation? Since they were going to cooperate, Gouda naturally had to understand the purpose of Qin Chuan's cooperation with them and what benefits they could gain. As a leader, he had to be responsible for the people behind him. After hearing Gouda's words, Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said to Gouda, I want to know, if Sunflower Tao, the god you believe in, loses its current power one day, will you still believe in it? After hearing Qin Chuan's question, Gouda answered without hesitation, Of course, we will always be God's people. However, you are wrong about one thing. God's name is not Sunflower Tao. That is the name you outsiders gave God. God's name is God Sunflower. Qin Chuan looked at Gouda meaningfully and said in an extremely serious tone, Okay, no matter what God's name is, I have a way now. As long as you are willing to cooperate with me, there is a great chance that I can help you return to God Sunflower's side. Ground Camp. After learning that Sunflower Planet's resistance army had captured many captives, Hai Feng was furious. He turned around and wanted to kill the captives he had just captured to vent his anger. Fortunately, the representative of the Heavenly Federation, Hart, stopped him. Mr. Haida, don't be impulsive. The enemy must have captured our people because they want to exchange captives with us. If you kill these captives, our people will also be killed. Hart said to Hai Feng, This won't do us any good. Exchange captives? Hai Feng was furious. Even if those captives are all dead, I won't agree to exchange captives with those aboriginals. After hearing Hai Feng's words, Hart's expression immediately changed. He quickly said to Hai Feng, Mr. Haida, look around and be careful with your words. After hearing Hart's advice, Hai Feng subconsciously looked around. When he saw the dissatisfied gazes looking at him, he immediately calmed down. Among the captives, there was no lack of symbol array masters who had already surrendered to them. The words he had just said clearly showed that he didn't care about the lives of these captives. He still treated them as outsiders and didn't care about them. It would be strange if these symbol array master's expressions were good in the face of his attitude. Outside, you represent the great metropolis. Hart transmitted his voice to Haifeng. If the great metropolis hears what you just said, do you know the consequences? At this moment, Haifeng had already calmed down. He also thought about the consequences of his words being spread. His expression immediately became serious, and he said in a deep voice, "I was too agitated just now. I was momentarily blinded by anger, and said those irrational words. I will definitely actively communicate with the aboriginals of Sunflower Planet and discuss the matter of exchanging captives." Everyone saw that Haifeng had changed his attitude. He had already verbally admitted his mistake and admitted defeat. Their gazes towards Haifeng also became normal. However, if Haifeng were to say one thing and do another, then they wouldn't be so good-tempered. Chapter 966. After the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army took the initiative to contact them, Haifeng immediately sent out a negotiation team to negotiate with them. Both sides agreed on the exchange of captives, but there were some differences in the location of the exchange. The great metropolis wanted to conduct the exchange on a plain far away from the Sunflower Road, while the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army wanted to conduct the exchange close to the Sunflower Road, preferably within 100 meters. Neither side was willing to give in on this disagreement, so the two sides parted on bad terms, and the first negotiation was declared a failure. After the negotiation team returned to the camp and reported to Haifeng, Haifeng couldn't help but frown and ask in confusion, "Why do they insist on conducting the exchange within 100 meters of the Sunflower Road? Do they have other ideas? Do they want to destroy the Sunflower Road and fight us to the death?" Hearing Haifeng's question, Hart shook his head and said, "I don't think the probability is high. The Sunflower Road is just a Tao text to us, so even if it's destroyed, the loss won't be too great. But to those aboriginals, the Sunflower Road is the god they believe in. I can guarantee that if anyone wants to destroy the Sunflower Road, those aboriginals will be the first to disagree. They will protect the Sunflower Road even if it costs them their lives." Haifeng frowned and said, "Then why do they insist on conducting the exchange within 100 meters of the Sunflower Road?" Hart pondered for a moment, then replied, "Could it be because they are worried that we will suddenly attack them after the exchange? Our spiritual force and spiritual force will be greatly affected within 100 meters of the Sunflower Road, but those aboriginals won't be affected. Perhaps they only want to protect themselves, which is why they chose to conduct the exchange within 100 meters of the Sunflower Road." Hearing Hart's conjecture, Haifeng coldly snorted and said, "Those aboriginals are really narrow-minded. Sigh, no matter what, we have to conduct the exchange with those aboriginals. If we give up on the negotiation because of this matter, then your previous words will become a fatal weakness, and we will be attacked by everyone." Hart helplessly looked at Haifeng. "If you didn't speak out of turn, we wouldn't be in this mess now." Haifeng's expression couldn't help but become unsightly. Although Hart's words were reasonable, he didn't want to admit that this was the result of his own mistakes. "Then let's do as those natives say." Haifeng snorted, "When the time comes you can go." "I won't go." Seeing that Haifeng wanted to leave everything to him, Hart helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "All right, I'll go when the time comes. You can handle the rest." In the catacombs, Qin Chuan had been arranged to rest in a relatively good room after the discussion of the cooperation that day. He had been waiting for the results of the negotiations between the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army and the metropolitan government. On this day, just as Qin Chuan was cultivating, Gouda suddenly sent someone to invite him to the previous hall. Qin Chuan walked into the hall and smiled at Gouda. "Leader, you invited me here today because you have already reached an agreement with the metropolitan government, right?" Gouda nodded and said to Qin Chuan, The other party has already agreed to carry out the exchange of captives within 100 meters of God's sunflower. The time is set for tomorrow morning. Now, can you tell me what your plan is? Qin chuckled and said to Gouda, then let me confirm again. You all believe in God's sunflower. Even if God's sunflower loses its divine power, it won't matter, right? Gouda nodded and said, yes, we believe in God's sunflower. No matter what happens to God's sunflower, we will continue to believe in God's sunflower. Hearing Gouda's confirmation, Qin smiled and said to Gouda, the metropolitan government values your God's sunflower because of its divine power. If God's sunflower loses its divine power, it will still be your God's sunflower, but it will no longer be the sunflower path of the metropolitan government. At that time, the metropolitan government will most likely give up on God's sunflower and give up on occupying Sunflower Planet. This way, God's sunflower will naturally return to your side. Hearing Qin words, Gouda's expression changed slightly. He asked with some surprise, you have a way to make God's sunflower lose its divine power? Qin nodded and said to Gouda, I do have a way to make your God's sunflower lose its divine power. However, I need to be within 100 meters of God's sunflower in order to do so. This is also the reason why I asked you to set the exchange of captives within 100 meters of God's sunflower. Gouda looked deeply at Qin and asked, if God's sunflower loses its divine power, will the metropolitan government destroy God's sunflower? Forgive me for being blunt, but I can't be sure about this. Qin pursed his lips and said with a serious face, however, you have to understand that it is almost impossible for you to return to God's sunflower's side without paying any price and making any sacrifices. Now, you only have two choices. Either you take a gamble as I said, or you continue to curl up in this underground cavern and be a resistance army for the rest of your lives. Hearing Qin words, Gouda's expression suddenly turned ugly. He said in a low voice, you are using me. No matter what we choose during the exchange of captives tomorrow, you will make God's sunflower lose its divine power, right? Qin sighed and said to Gouda, I have told you before that I have my own selfish motives. I have also asked you about this before. Even if God's sunflower loses its divine power, it will still be your God's sunflower. Since that is the case, it doesn't matter to you whether God's sunflower has its divine power or not, right? There was no such thing as having the best of both worlds. If Qin wanted to repair the runic sword, then the resistance army of Sunflower Star had to make a certain sacrifice and take a gamble. He could not give up on repairing the runic sword just because he considered the feelings of the resistance army of Sunflower Star. This was the best solution he could think of at the moment. In the face of Qin honesty, Gouda's expression changed again and again. Now that the arrow was knocked on the bow, it had to be released. Even if he changed his mind now, it was already too late. Just as Qin had said, if they did not take this gamble, they might not be able to return to God's sunflower's side for the rest of their lives. All right, I will take the gamble. Gouda gritted his teeth. But remember, if God's sunflower loses its divine power and is destroyed by the people of the great metropolis, then I will not let you off. I swear. In the face of Gouda's anger, Qin sighed and said, I will do my best to protect your God's sunflower. Qin knew that after today's conversation, the resistance army of Sunflower Star would no longer have any good impression of him. However, there was no other way. In order to repair the runic sword, this was a choice he had to make. Chapter 967. The next morning, Qin and the other prisoners gathered together. Under the lead of the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army, they passed through the complex and difficult caverns and arrived at the surface. As soon as Qin arrived on the surface, he felt an invisible force affecting his mental strength and spiritual force. When he saw the Sunflower Road about 500 meters away, He understood that it was because he was too close to it. Qin Chuan was not the only one who felt this. However, the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army was not affected at all. They had long been used to bathing in the glory of the gods. They only felt warm and comfortable, and would never feel uncomfortable. Not long after the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army brought Qin Chuan and the others out, Heart also brought a group of people and captives nearby. When Gouda saw this, he looked at Qin Chuan with a complicated expression, then continued to lead the group towards the Sunflower Road. They slowly came to within 100 meters of the Sunflower Road. When they entered this range, every member of the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army had tears in their eyes. They kept saying some incomprehensible words to the Sunflower Road, as if they were praying for something. At this time, the others had no time to care about what the Sunflower Planet Resistance Army was doing, because they were already feeling dizzy and extremely uncomfortable. On the surface, Qin Chuan was no different from the others. He was also very dizzy and nauseous, but Qin Chuan was completely acting. In fact, under the protection of the runic sword, his mind was very clear, and his body did not feel any discomfort. Runic sword, how long will it take you to absorb the power of the Sunflower Road? At this time, Qin Chuan had already completed the most difficult task. Next, it would depend on the efficiency of the runic sword. In response to Qin Chuan's question, the runic sword quickly responded. In order to completely absorb the power of the Sunflower Road, it would need at least 10 minutes. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qin Chuan breathed a sigh of relief. 10 minutes was not a long time. It would take about 10 minutes to complete the exchange of captives. It was definitely enough. Gouda, can we start the exchange of captives now? Heart frowned as he looked at Gouda. Even with his strength, he was already feeling a little uncomfortable. If he left too late, it might cause permanent damage to the others. It was better to complete the exchange of captives as soon as possible and leave. Hearing Heart's shout, Gouda, who was kneeling on the Sunflower Road, slowly stood up and said to Heart, "You can't keep occupying the Sunflower Road. The Resistance Army of Sunflower Planet will definitely take it back from your hands. This is our Sunflower Road, not your Sunflower Road." Heart sneered. "Once we've completed the exchange of the captives, if you still want to continue attacking us to seize Sunflower Path, I'll welcome you at any time." Gouda did not respond to Heart's disdain and ridicule. Both sides began the exchange of captives according to the agreement. In order to prevent any accidents from happening during the exchange was done one-on-one. It would take a long time. Although Heart was getting impatient, there was nothing he could do about the stubborn Gouda. He could only endure it. After about 12 minutes, the exchange of captives was finally completed. As the last captive to be exchanged, Qin Chuan was like a puppet at the mercy of others. This was because his consciousness was currently immersed in his mind and communicating with the runic sword. "How's the absorption?" Qin Chuan could not wait to ask the runic sword. He wanted to know the result. In response to Qin Chuan's question, the runic sword quickly responded. The absorption was complete. They could leave now. After receiving the runic sword's response, Qin Chuan breathed a sigh of relief. His consciousness returned to his body. He subconsciously looked at Gouda, who was standing opposite him. He gave Gouda a subtle nod, reminding Gouda that the matter had been resolved. The rest was up to fate. In response to Qin Chuan's subtle hint, Gouda's expression could not help but become extremely complicated. He did not know whether what he did was right or wrong. However, in order to return to the side of the Sunflower Road, he had to take a gamble. He did not want his people to become people of the catacombs thousands of years later. The exchange of captives is over. Let's go. Gouda led the resistance army of Sunflower Planet back the way they came. Everyone was reluctant to leave, looking back repeatedly with every step they took. When he saw Gouda turn around and leave, Heart's nervous mood quietly relaxed. If Gouda wanted to attack them at this time, they would not be able to withstand it. Let's go. Hart quickly led everyone into the distance. Everyone was sprinting at full speed. No one wanted to stay here and be tortured by the sunflower path. However, no one noticed that the influence of the sunflower path on them was dissipating bit by bit. It would not be long before it completely disappeared. Qin did not know how long it would take for the sunflower path to be discovered. Therefore, he had to leave Sunflower Planet as soon as possible. This captive incident was a very good excuse. However, when Qin thought of this, someone had already requested to leave before him. I don't want to stay here any longer. I want to go to the Hurricane Star System to comprehend the Heavenly Wind Path. A Talisman Formation Master who was clearly frightened by the resistance army of Sunflower Planet made his request to Haifeng with a trembling voice. When Haifeng heard this request, he frowned slightly. Although he was displeased, he did not say anything unpleasant. This was because he could understand these people's thoughts. After all, everyone was here to comprehend the Tao Rune, not to fight the resistance army of Sunflower Planet. Compared to staying on Sunflower Planet, which was often in turmoil, going to the Hurricane Star System to comprehend the Heavenly Wind Path was clearly a better choice. Who else wants to leave? Say it all at once. Haifeng looked at everyone. This is in accordance with the rules. You can all leave together now. Otherwise, you will have to wait for the next spaceship. Haifeng could not be bothered to wait for the others to step forward one by one. He simply took the initiative to ask. When they heard Haifeng's words, dozens of figures immediately stepped forward. Most of these people were the captives who had just been exchanged. Qin was also mixed in with them. When Haifeng saw this scene, he straightforwardly said, "Prepare yourselves. The spaceship will depart in an hour." Everyone rested quietly in the camp for about 40 minutes before they were informed that they could board the spaceship and prepare to depart. Qin was very glad that no one had noticed anything strange about the sunflower path during this time. Otherwise, they would not have been able to leave so easily. Hurricane Star System, Heavenly Wind Path, I'm coming. Chapter 968. The Hurricane Galaxy was 7 galaxies away from the Great Jupiter Galaxy. It would take at least 10 days to reach the Hurricane Galaxy on a spaceship. Because most of the people had yet to recover from the trauma of being captured, the spaceship was very quiet during these 10 days. When the spaceship arrived at the Hurricane Galaxy and arrived at the Heavenly Wind Planet, everyone left their bedrooms and gathered in the hall. However, even at this time, everyone was extremely quiet. There was almost no sound. Dear passengers, the spaceship has arrived at the Heavenly Wind Planet and will be landing at the Heavenly Wind Planet Starport 1. Please leave the spaceship in an orderly manner. Thank you for your cooperation, and we look forward to your next visit. Following the sweet announcement from the spaceship, Qin and the others walked down from the spaceship and stepped onto the ground of the Heavenly Wind Planet. Just like the Sunflower Planet, the Heavenly Wind Planet was also under the joint management of various forces. However, unlike the Sunflower Planet, the Heavenly Wind Planet did not have any native inhabitants. It was a space explorer who discovered the Heavenly Wind Path on the Heavenly Wind Planet, and that was why the Heavenly Wind Planet entered the public eye. Welcome to the Heavenly Wind Planet. I am the adjutant of the Unju Group's troops stationed on the Heavenly Wind Planet. You can call me Nero. Nero was from the Antak clan and had served the Unju Group for more than 300 years. He was once the Unju Group's ace security guard. Later, because he failed to protect an influential person in the Translang capital, he was transferred to the Heavenly Wind Planet. Everyone forced a smile in the face of Nero's welcome. They knew very well that they had been labeled as deserters. The people of these large forces were very warm to them on the surface, but in fact they despised them in their hearts. Compared to the others who had a lot of thoughts, Qinhuan's thoughts were much simpler. He did not care what others thought of him at all. What he was thinking now was how to get close to the heavenly wind path without anyone noticing. Then, he would let the rune sword absorb the power of the heavenly wind path. That way, his journey of comprehending the Tao rune would be complete. Under Nero's lead, Qin Chuan and the others arrived at the heavenly wind planet camp. At this time, there were many people walking around in the camp. When they saw Qin Chuan and the others arrive, a playful smile appeared on their faces. "Oh, these deserters are quite punctual," someone in the crowd mocked in a strange tone, causing the expressions of the people who had just arrived at the campsite to become incomparably embarrassed. However, they were only angry for a moment and did not make any substantial counterattack. Instead, what they endured was even more unbridled mockery. "Ha ha ha, look at them. They look like stray dogs. What a joke. What a bunch of trash. Why do we have to comprehend Tao runes with such people? I reckon that they will regret coming here after witnessing the might of the gale. Who knows, they might even go back. I just don't know if they have enough time." Hearing these people's unbridled mockery, everyone's expression became extremely sullen. They wanted to refute, but they couldn't find any way to do so. This was because they had indeed escaped from the great Jupiter system to this place. This was a fact. Just when everyone had nowhere to vent their pent-up anger, Qin Chuan suddenly took a step forward and said to the people in front of him, "Life and death are insignificant. If you are not convinced, then fight. Don't just talk. Let's do something real. Are you interested in a life and death match? The winner lives and the loser dies." After Qin Chuan said this, the scene suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan with an extremely strange expression. No one had expected that Qin Chuan would actually take the initiative to stand up and fight back. Moreover, his counterattack was so powerful. Just when someone was about to speak, Qin Chuan spoke first. "If any of you open your mouth to speak again, then I will take it that you have agreed to my life and death match. I will not stop until one of you is dead." Qin Chuan's words successfully shut everyone's mouth. They still had a great future ahead of them. There was really no need to fight to the death with Qin Chuan because of a moment's slip of the tongue. It was completely not worth it. Seeing that no one responded, Qin Chuan sneered and did not say anything else. He just turned around and returned to the group. At this time, the people around him looked at Qin Chuan with extremely complicated expressions. They did not know whether they should thank Qin Chuan for standing up for them. In fact, Qin Chuan did not think as much as these people. The reason why he stood up for them was not because of the people around him, but because of Tu Shanyu. Qin Chuan was sure that Tu Shanyu must have known that he was coming here. At this time, Tu Shanyu might be secretly observing him. If Qin Chuan completely endured these sarcastic remarks, Tu Shanyu would definitely look down on him, which might lead to changes in his cooperation with the Tushan family. Therefore, Qin Chuan had to stand up and suppress the people on the opposite side to prove himself. Even if they had to fight to the death, Qin Chuan was not afraid at all. Although these people were all geniuses from different galaxies, Qin Chuan did not think that any of them could be a match for him. As Qin Chuan thought, Tu Shanyu was indeed secretly observing him. Not only Tu Shanyu, but also Tu Shanyang, the leader of the Tushan family stationed here. "What do you think of this kid?" Tu Shanyu looked at Qin Chuan and said in a low voice, "He is the one who has comprehended the great law of thunder, and has the ability to help others pass the divine retribution. People who have mastered the great law of thunder are not rare in this world, but he is the only one with such a special ability." Hearing Tu Shanyu's question, Tu Shanyang nodded slightly and responded, "Not bad. He is confident and vigorous. He is a good seedling. Sadly, he doesn't want to join the family. He only wants to cooperate with the family." Tu Shanyu glanced at Tu Shanyang in a subtle way and said, "It's a bit unbelievable that our Tushan family would cooperate with a little divinity cultivator, but in fact, he does have the ability to do so. It's not a bad thing for our Tushan family to be friends with him. In Tushan Yu's eyes, Qin Chuan was indeed nothing compared to the Tushan family. However, based on Qin Chuan's current performance, as long as he didn't die in the future, he would definitely be able to make a name for himself. By making friends with Qin Chuan in advance, Tushan Yu could gain Qin Chuan's favor, and in the future, it would be easier for them to ask for help. Indeed, we can make friends with him. Tushan Yang responded. Right now, he may only be able to help divinity cultivators pass the divine retribution, but in the future, when he grows up, he may be able to help Dongshu cultivators pass the divine retribution, or even become a universe overlord. Chapter 969. Comprehending the Sunflower Path had its own rules, and Comprehending the Sky-Wind Path also had its own rules. However, compared to the various rules of the Sunflower Path, the rules of the Sky-Wind Path were much simpler. Other than not being allowed to leave the Sky-Wind Path, and not being allowed to directly enter the Sky-Wind Path, there were no other special rules. After settling down, Qin Chuan did not immediately head over to comprehend the Sky-Wind Path. Instead, he first went around to inquire about the Sky-Wind Path. The Sky-Wind Path was a huge hurricane that was constantly moving. It did not have a fixed location nor a fixed route. If one wanted to comprehend the Sky-Wind Path, they would have to move together with it. Thus, although there was no danger in comprehending the Sky-Wind Path, it was still a very troublesome matter. When he heard the news, Qin Chuan was a little surprised. Whether it was the Sunflower Path or the Sky-Wind Path, they were completely different from what he had imagined. The Sunflower Path is a huge sunflower, while the Sky-Wind Path is a huge hurricane. Could it be that every type of Tao is a natural form that was born from the heavens and earth? Are they not clear symbols? Qin Chuan was a little puzzled. He did not know anyone here, so he did not know if he should ask such an ignorant question. He could only ask the runic sword, and the runic sword's answer clearly told Qin Chuan that anything with a spirit could become a Tao rune. According to the runic sword's meaning, anything that gave birth to the truth of the great Tao could become a Tao rune. In other words, a Tao rune could be a tree, a gust of wind, or a pen, or a word. There were no rules to speak of. No matter what the Tao rune is, let's go take a look at the Sky-Wind Path first. Qin Chuan turned on his optical computer, and after confirming the location of the Sky-Wind Path with the staff of the Sky-Wind planet, he took a flying shuttle and rushed over. 2 hours later, Qin Chuan saw the Sky-Wind Path from afar. This was the first time Qin Chuan had seen such a huge hurricane in his life. It was as if it covered the sky and covered the sun, turning the surrounding 10,000 li into a world of wind. The shuttle pilot said to Qin Chuan, "This is only the outer region of the heavenly wind path. I can only send you up to here. You will have to walk the rest of the way by yourself. If you want to comprehend the heavenly wind path, you have to be at least 1,000 miles away from it." Hearing the pilot's words, Qin Chuan asked him curiously, "Can we get within 100 meters?" Hearing Qin Chuan's question, the pilot looked at Qin Chuan strangely. He stared at Qin Chuan for a while before answering, "If you really want to die, you don't have to go within 100 meters. You'll be torn apart by the hurricane if you go within 1,000 miles. After answering Qin Chuan's question, the pilot left on the flying shuttle, leaving Qin Chuan alone here. Qin Chuan looked at the Sky-Wind Path in the distance and gritted his teeth. "Damn you, Douben, you actually dared to lie to me. You even said that I can get within 100 meters of the Sky-Wind Path. I really believed you." Originally, Qin Chuan thought that he could easily help the runic sword absorb the energy of the Sky-Wind Path, but now it seemed like he was thinking too much. "No matter what, let's go in and take a look." After observing for a while, Qin Chuan plunged into the wind at the periphery of the Sky-Wind Path. Although the wind here was very strong, it was nothing to a cultivator. Qin Chuan braved the strong wind, and walked all the way until he was 3,000 miles away from the center of the sky wind path. Along the way, Qin Chuan did not meet a single person. When Qin Chuan was 1,000 miles away from the center of the sky wind path, Qin Chuan finally met a few talisman array masters who were comprehending the sky wind path. Qin Chuan had seen some of these talisman array masters before, but there were some that Qin Chuan had never seen before. Most of them were the newcomers of this year. There are only newcomers here. The consecrators of the various powers should be in other directions or even deeper. Qin Chuan gazed at the sharp wind that had already materialized in front of him. After pausing for a moment, he took a step forward. After taking this step, Qin Chuan suddenly realized that the feeling of being 1,000 miles away and being within 1,000 miles was completely different. When the wind blew on Qin Chuan's body from 1,000 miles away, it made Qin Chuan feel as if he was being cut by a knife. Although it was painful, it was still within a tolerable range. However, the wind within 1,000 miles was different. The wind within 1,000 miles was like a giant hammer smashing onto Qin Chuan's body, causing Qin Chuan to feel extremely pressured. Not only that, the wind within 1,000 miles was like countless hands tearing at his body, as if it wanted to tear him into pieces. Sometimes it was hammering, sometimes it was tearing. This kind of completely different pressure that existed at the same time caused Qin Chuan to feel uncomfortable. He suddenly turned around and leapt backwards. Only when he was 1,000 miles away did he feel his body become lighter, and the pressure suddenly decreased by a lot. Why is the wind within 1,000 miles so terrifying? Even with the strength of my body, I can't withstand it. Qin Chuan was shocked. At the same time, he felt some lingering fear in his heart. If he had come out just a little later, perhaps something would have happened. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. You lasted a little longer than I expected. I was just about to go in and save you. When he heard this person, Qin Chuan raised his head and looked at the other party, and he asked with some doubt, "Who are you?" "I'm a member of the Unju group. I'm in charge of guarding this area. Once I discover that you talisman array masters are in danger, I'll immediately rescue you." The other party replied, "My number is 1456. You can just call me 1456. When he heard 1450 SXS words, Qin Chuan was slightly surprised, and he asked, "Since you already knew that the area within 1,000 miles was very dangerous, why didn't you stop me earlier?" 1456 chuckled when he heard this, and said to Qin Chuan, "Because the people above felt that instead of lecturing you, it would be better to let you personally experience how terrifying the wind within 1,000 miles of the heavenly wind path is. This way, you'll remember it in your heart and won't dare to cross the line again." When he heard 1450 SIX's explanation, Qin Chuan couldn't help but reveal a trace of understanding. Then, he curiously asked, "Could it be that you're not afraid of the wind within 1,000 miles? 1456 shook his head and said, "It's not that we're not afraid, but because we have wind attribute innate runes, we can last a little longer within 1,000 miles. That's enough time to save you." "So that's how it is." Qin Chuan pursed his lips and asked, "Then could it be that no one can stay within 1,000 miles of the heavenly wind path for a long time?" "There are, but very few." 1456 said to Qin Chuan, "I seriously suggest that you don't try again. The first time you try, we'll save you. But the second time, we won't. So if you encounter danger within 1,000 miles again, you might directly die." When he heard 1450 SIX's kind reminder, Qin Chuan's expression immediately became extremely grave. Chapter 970. For Qin Chuan, staying within 1,000 li radius of the heavenly wind path for a long period of time was already an extremely difficult task, let alone being within 100 li radius. He felt that the hurricane within 100 li radius would be able to tear him apart, or even a powerful cultivator of the Dongshu stage. Old Brother Rune's sword, when I was on Sunflower Planet, I could still think of some ways to get close to Sunflower Path. But here, I really can't think of any other way. This is purely due to my lack of strength. Qin Chuan had a helpless expression. To get within 100 meters of Sky Wind Path, one had to be at least at the level of a universe overlord. For someone at his level, not to mention 100 meters, even 100 miles would be difficult. Facing Qin Chuan's helplessness, the Rune sword responded, "No need for 100 meters, 100 miles would suffice." 100 miles would suffice? Qin Chuan was slightly taken aback. If it's within 100 miles, then it's not like I can't think of some ways to try. But why does it require 100 meters to absorb the power of Sunflower Path? But Sky Wind Path is limited to 100 miles. Facing Qin Chuan's confusion, the Rune sword responded again, the situation was different, so the requirements were different. I think I understand what you mean. Sunflower Path may be huge, but it's only 1,000 meters tall. Sky Wind Path, however, covers the sky and covers the sun. The sizes of these two paths are not on the same level, so if you want to absorb their power, you naturally can't use the same standard. Qin Chuan grinned and said, "But this 100 miles is giving me a headache." A headache was a headache, but he still had to think of a way. The first method that Qin Chuan thought of was to borrow the power of the wind to merge with Sky Wind Path. However, when he wanted to inscribe a wind-type glyph array, he realized that under the influence of Sky Wind Path, all the glyphs were unable to take shape. Just as they were inscribed, they were blown away by the wind. If this method doesn't work, then I'll have to change to another method. Qin Chuan pursed his lips and shouted to the little armored dragon that was sleeping soundly in his brain, "Little armored dragon, it's time for you to perform." Hearing Qin Chuan's call, the little armored dragon opened its eyes in a daze, its face full of confusion. "Little armored dragon, we need your help." Qin Chuan looked at the little armored dragon curiously and asked, "Since you can devour anything, then you should be able to devour wind as well, right? With the sturdiness of your body, you should be able to enter within 100 miles of the heavenly wind path, right?" The little armored dragon scratched its head in confusion, and then its figure flashed to the outside world. If it weren't for Qin Chuan's quick reflexes to grab the unsuspecting little armored dragon, the little armored dragon would have been blown away by a gust of wind. Fortunately, the little armored dragon adjusted its state in time and adapted to the current wind force. After trying to enter the range of 1,000 miles, it came out again and said to Qin Chuan, "No problem." Looking at the little armored dragon patting its chest confidently, Qin Chuan grinned and asked, "Are you sure there's no problem? The hurricane inside is not as simple as you think." "Don't worry." The little armored dragon's face was full of pride. "I can do it." Seeing the little armored dragon once again guarantee that there was no problem, Qin Chuan also believed the little armored dragon's words. As long as the little armored dragon swallowed him into its stomach, he could follow the little armored dragon to within 100 miles of the heavenly wind path. At that time, when the runic sword absorbed the power of the heavenly wind path, he could let the little armored dragon use the shadow shifting technique to leave. This plan could be said to be very perfect. "There's no time to lose, let's go." Following Qin Chuan's command, the little armored dragon immediately opened its mouth wide and swallowed Qin Chuan into its stomach. After that, it turned around and flew towards the depths of the heavenly wind path. Although its speed was not fast, it was still moving forward. The hurricane that was enough to tear Qin Chuan apart was indeed unable to cause any harm to the little armored dragon's sturdy body. Sensing this, Qin Chuan was even more relieved. Buzz. The little armored dragon flew forward all the way, and used a full 10 days to fly within 100 miles of the heavenly wind path. However, just as Qin Chuan let the runic sword quickly absorb the power of the heavenly wind path, something unexpected happened. Because Qinchuan's body was not in the heavenly wind path, the runic sword was unable to absorb the power of the heavenly wind path. After hearing this news, Qinchuan was dumbfounded. He said to the runic sword with some astonishment, "In other words, my body must be within 100 miles of the heavenly wind path for you to be able to absorb the power of the heavenly wind path? It can't be in the little armored dragon's body?" Facing Qinchuan's astonishment, the runic sword responded. This was the truth. This time, Qinchuan was a little dizzy. The hurricane within 100 miles and the hurricane within 1,000 miles had a huge difference. Even if an almighty Dongshu stage cultivator came here, they might not be able to withstand the hurricane for a few seconds, let alone him. Perhaps the moment he left the little armored dragon's stomach and came to the outside world, he would be directly torn apart by the hurricane, and not even his soul would be left. But they had already come here. If they turned around and left without trying, it would be too much of a pity. So after thinking about it, Qinchuan finally decided to take the risk and give it a try. Just as Qinchuan was about to leave the little armored dragon's body, the little armored dragon stopped Qinchuan. It said to Qinchuan with a serious face, "If you go out, you will die." Hearing the little armored dragon's words, Qinchuan slightly frowned and said in a low voice, "But we have already come here, are we going to leave without trying?" Qinchuan obviously knew that he might die, but he believed that if he really encountered a life-threatening situation, the runic sword would definitely protect him. If not, he would not dare to risk his life like this. Hearing this, the little armored dragon looked at Qinchuan with some hesitation. After thinking for a while, the little armored dragon suddenly did an extremely shocking thing. It actually took off the carapace on its body. Qinchuan looked at the little armored dragon's slightly clumsy action of taking off the carapace and was stunned. He really did not expect the little armored dragon to have such a special talent. But when he thought about how those Zerg warriors he faced before could also take off their carapaces, he felt relieved. Although the little armored dragon had undergone a mutation, it was still Zerg, so it was normal for it to be able to use Zerg's abilities. "You want me to go out wearing your carapace?" Qinchuan looked at the palm-sized carapace handed to him by the little armored dragon, and his face could not help but show a touch of doubt. "It's so small, can I do it?" The little armored dragon nodded and patted its chest. "No problem." Hearing the little armored dragon's words, Qinchuan reached out and took the golden carapace. When the carapace entered his hand, it suddenly turned into a stream of light and enveloped Qinchuan from head to toe. Buzz! Accompanied by a violent buzzing sound, the stream of light slowly dissipated, and a tall and majestic figure shrouded in golden armor appeared on the spot. "This is..." Qinchuan looked down at the armor on his body and said in disbelief, "Battle armor? It's actually battle armor." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.